council meeting of Monday, July 26, 2021. And I'll call the meeting to order. Thank you, Hope. And the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and late items, Hope.
Yes, we have a number of late items. They were circulated to council by email earlier today in regards to the DVP for 974 Windjammer, a revised recommendation regarding the hazardous slopes, hazardous areas development permit areas, and then some additional letters regarding the use of public spaces bylaw, and a few letters regarding the Crown land referral as well. So those will be included in the revised agenda package tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much, Hope. And does anybody have anything that they'd like to add to the agenda or is missing? I'm not seeing too many hands there. So if everybody's okay with that, we'll approve the agenda by consensus. We'll move on to public comments, Hope. And what have you got?
I have 3 signed up for this evening, starting with
Wonderful.
Ashley Fleming regarding the use of public spaces bylaw.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they are here. Don't see. So maybe we'll go to Rosemary Knight, who's next regarding the use of public spaces law.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as Hope said, I'm here to talk about Bylaw 537, the public spaces. And this bylaw has been described in various places as being needed to bring Bowen Island in line with other new municipalities. But as you all know, we're not other municipalities, and that as a reason for doing something rarely goes over well on Bowen. So we describe ourselves as small, rural, friendly, caring, and a friendly, caring community doesn't need the same level of rules that other municipalities do. People talk to each other, they know each other, they can work things out. Now, others have written with various concerns about this bylaw. I selected one section that I found most concerning, and that is section 3.2a. And when I read public place, I think of, as an example, the Cates Hill Neighborhood Park that's not far from where we live. And 3.2 reads, a person must not in or on any public place. And then it's part A that says, perform, take place in any procession, march, drill, performance, ceremony, concert, meeting, assembly, or other formal or informal gathering of 20 persons. And then there's some except for. Well, the question I had when I read this is the same as I had for a number of the amendments with the land use bylaw, and that is, what exactly is the problem we're trying to solve? And how does the language here solve that problem? So again, thinking about Cates Hill Neighborhood Park, what is the problem with people marching, performing, meeting? So I did speak with staff about the inclusion under this list of things not permitted, this phrase, or other formal or informal gathering of 20 persons, which struck me as far too broad and contrary to what we want. We want people gathering in our neighborhood parks. Staff came back to me and will be recommending removal of that phrase this evening in an amendment. So I would urge council to support that staff amendment. I felt that phrase was far too broad.
Okay.
But beyond that, I really urge you to go through each of the listed uses one by one: procession, march, drill, performance, ceremony, concert, and imagine what the problems could be. I'm starting to think that the concern might be a group taking over and blocking access to public space for others. Well, if that's the problem, let's just say something like that, that no one can take over a public space in such a way that it blocks access by others. But even that, I wonder, given that we're supposedly this friendly, caring community, couldn't we just work that out? So I leave you with one specific example of language that I really think needs changing, and I would encourage you to support the staff amendment being brought forward, but a larger request to rethink this entire bylaw to ensure we are putting in place not what other municipalities have, but what is truly appropriate for Bowen Island, until the day comes when we give up on trusting and being caring and friendly and need more extensive bylaws. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rosemary. Points well taken.
Next, we have Richard Wiefelspuett regarding the CRC covenant.
All right, Richard, welcome.
Can't hear you?
You're muted, Richard.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
glitches, we get better at it over time. So I'm Richard, Wiefelspuett, property owner on Bowen Island, and I'm speaking today to the voluntary covenant proposal by Cape on Bowen. It's agenda item 3.3. And before I say what I want to say, it's really hard to keep up with you guys. You throw this stuff out one by the minute, and I'm really concerned about how fast things are being proposed and attempted to move forward. This agenda item 3.3, the voluntary covenant proposal by Cape on Bowen, has been added to the agenda on Friday, and this is, as far as I can tell, the first publication of this idea and the related report. We had discussions on the land use bylaw, the amendments proposed there, and as it stands, the LUB still provides protection of the Cape as an environmentally sensitive area in its section 7.1. The proposed removal of this section has been scrutinized and criticized in previous council meetings and the public hearing. The related upstream omissions in the OCP have been identified, and the necessity for fixing these errors has been communicated. How can staff recommend signing the covenant when these previous discussions have not yet been concluded? This recommendation is premature, and the covenant as proposed will not provide the same level of protection for the environmentally sensitive area of the Cape. This covenant proposal and the related report by an urban planning consultant needs to be widely reviewed before it can be accepted. No time for adequate communication and transparent information has been allotted. Why do this when we're trying to put in place something more comprehensive? Where is the staff analysis of how those two layers of oversight will complement or possibly contradict? This covenant proposal was not published anywhere before and is now floated only at the last minute. So council cannot possibly consider the staff recommendation and authorize mayor and the corporate officer to endorse this covenant proposal by Cape on Bowen. So once again, I urge council to use common sense and go with the flow and have a good look at that before you commit to anything that might be hard to unwind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
And we'll just circle back for Ashley Fleming.
Okay.
I don't see them here, so I think it would be safe to carry on.
Okay, I'll call for anybody else would like to speak on the public comments at this time. Okay, I don't see anybody. Then we'll move on. Thank you, everybody. And we'll go down to the consent agenda. And does anybody would like some clarification on any items in the consent agenda? Speak now. Okay, Allison.
I would like to pull 3.2 just so we can address the issues raised by the letter writers.
Okay.
I didn't hear that. Who was that? 3.
That was
3.2.
3.2 for Allison.
Okay.
Who else? Anybody else?
Yeah,
Me,
me.
Maureen. I got Maureen and then Sue Ellen.
3.3. 3.3.
3.3, okay. And Sue Ellen.
I was also going to ask for 3.3. That's fine.
Okay, you're in there too. Okay. Any others? No? Okay. Then the recommendation is the council approve the items as outlined in the July 26, 2021 consent agenda as amended. I'll move that for a second.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we'll move right into those issues at the present time while they're still hot on the agenda. So Allison.
Do we have
3.2.
Daniel with us right now? Because we're going to need him to address. There he is.
Yeah.
It's just, I went back, we had a couple of letters being concerned about the potential or possibility for site visibility, negative site visibility from the lower beach for the new house. And I couldn't really find anything in the staff reports that addressed that, but I remembered us talking at the previous meeting. that the house has been pulled back from one corner and looking at some pictures that were sent to us today, the new house is going to be similar in height to the old house. Is that correct?
And sorry, it's what, Allison?
The new house is going to be similar in height to the old house.
Yeah, I would.
Daniel,
Daniels, yeah.
we can't hear you. You're not muted either.
Great.
Work.
There you go.
So the proposed house is back further from the setback to the sea than the current house, especially on the side that fronts Crayola Beach. The proposed house, is larger and goes further up the hill than the current house outside of the setback to the sea. So where it connects to the garage is higher than the current house. But within the setback to the sea, I believe that they are the same height.
Okay. Allison?
That's all I wanted to do was just, allay the fears of the two people that wrote, I guess. So if nobody else.
The one gentleman that did write, Allison, wrote 2 letters. One letter was his
No, he
concern.
didn't write 2 letters. There were 2 separate letters, 2 different gentlemen.
No,
yeah.
he talked to the owner and the architect and was happy. It was the same address, so.
No,
Yeah.
no, it was a Rob and a Bob,
Yeah,
I know,
the
but
Rob
they're
and
both the
Bob,
same.
and father and son,
different
Oh, is
houses.
that what it
different
is?
houses.
Because he said it was a follow-up on the letter he did the day before. Anyway, listen, I'm not going to argue that. I take what you got to say. And go ahead, Sue Ellen.
Thank you. Yes, I was just following up on the same concerns from nearby neighbors. I was interested in the height and more now the garage and that sort of, if you were looking from the sea, that whole left side of the house would be higher because previously it was deck, I think. And I was wondering if the manager of Parks Planning had a look at that to see whether it could be, what would the views from Crayola Beach be, or from swimming out a little ways like people do. And secondly, because it's the house beside the right-of-way to, I believe it's Crayola Beach, is there, I looked at Bow Map and it looked like the trail was within the right-of-way, but sometimes that's not exactly within, it doesn't show exactly. And I just wondered if there had been any confirmation that the Crayola Trail access to the beach didn't encroach or trespass on to this property, because now would be the time to make an arrangement to legalize or make it right if there was an encroachment. And so those are my 2 questions. One about the height and could we see it from the beach? Secondly, about the, is the right of way okay?
I guess I would say, so it was referred to the manager of Parks and the Environment. And sort of we noted the concern that, it does overlook Crayola Beach. But as does the existing house within the setback. And then I don't know offhand the trail from Crayola Beach. Like I believe it is, when you walk down on the property, on the driveway on the property, the trail is in its own, it's like clearly located beyond the like the fence for the property sort of down the hill.
Oh, that's
I'm
right,
not
that
aware.
fence is there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine with me, but I'm still concerned about the additional house and garage structures and whether they would be visible from the beach, because those are really good points. And I would like to ask staff to check on that. So when we come to the motion, I would like to do one of the alternatives that I'm just pulling up here.
Okay, Allison, you brought this up.
Well, I brought it up because I was concerned of within the setback where the house would be more visible to the beach if it was taller. I don't think we can comment on the parts of the house that are already within, they're not applying for variances. So the garage, for example, is not a variance application as far as I'm concerned.
No,
Yeah.
are you prepared to read the recommendation?
And I was quite prepared to read the recommendation.
Okay.
So I will move that council issue development variance permit DVP 45-2021 for the variance of the setbacks to the sea in the rear lot line for 974 Windjammer Road, legally described as Lot B, District Lot 3042, Group 1, New Westminster District Plan, EPP 61561, PID 031228160.
All right, I'll second that. Any further discussion? I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and opposed? Okay.
Llewellyn is opposed.
Llewellyn, yeah, okay, you just keep moving around the screen here, and I've got a really small aperture as it was. Okay, so
I'll try and keep still.
yeah, no, that's not you. It's the rest of the mosaic that keeps going. Anyway, yeah, it'll show Councillor Fast in opposition. Thank you. And okay, 3.3, Maureen to start, and then Sue Ellen.
Thank you, Mayor Ander. And I also was a bit surprised to see this item on the agenda. When I read it initially, I actually thought it was related to the covenant that the Bowen Island Conservancy had proposed, and I wondered why it was on our agenda again. So after having read it, I understood why it was on the agenda, I think. So I just wanted to confirm a number of points before moving to the recommendation. The first point was, and I think that's been confirmed by a number of councillors and by Daniel, and the recommendation itself, that there are 23 of the 59 lots at the Cape that are affected by this covenant. And that's over and above the covenant that was just recently approved for the Conservancy. My concerns were, there were two concerns that I had. One was whether if we approved this covenanting of the land, if that would preclude further covenanting of the land, if the 23 lots were, for example, further rezoned. So is this a standalone covenant, or could there potentially be further covenants applied to this property? And that's a question for Daniel.
Yes.
Sure. So council could always enter into additional covenants on the property. If council wished to enter into another covenant on one of the sites and was in conflict with this covenant, council would have the option to release or amend the covenant, like this covenant, if it was in conflict.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful to know. And then my second question was related to discussions that you may have had with the Cape. And it is to ask, how does this benefit the Cape on Bowen to establish this covenant at this time?
Doesn't.
Question for Daniel.
Yeah.
Sure. So we had, myself and other staff had some discussions with the Cape on Bowen, who approached us wanting to enter into a protective covenant to protect essentially forested areas on the lots on the Cape, as they are. I think they publicly said that they're not looking to pursue a rezoning application and looking to sell some of their remaining lots that they own. But they wish to, before marketing and selling the lots, they wish to have some form of protection on them. In particular, they're worried about maintaining some of the tree cover that exists on the properties. So I think if you drive around of the lots that the Cape has sold, some of them you'll see have done quite, more significant tree clearing. So they wish to have some protections in place to restrict that. And so they had been entertaining ideas about essentially themselves as developers holding the covenant for tree clearing, but they weren't sure that it would be as secure as if the municipality was holding it, or their long-term interest in patrolling and sort of enforcing that covenant, and so the approach to municipality.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Those were my questions.
Okay, thank you. And Sue Ellen?
You're muted.
Thanks, sorry. Dishwashing noises from the other room. I'm interested in, if you scroll to the second last page, you'll find a table, table 1, and these are recommended species for tree and understory vegetation planting. And my question is, can this be referred out if there's not a huge rush, which has just appeared on our agenda recently? I would like to hear from and the reason I'm interested in referring it out is because there's a number of species on here that I have never seen on Bowen. So to leave this as the recommended species for tree and understory vegetation planting would mean introducing species to Bowen that don't naturally grow here. And since this whole covenant is about maintaining natural vegetation, I would like to get the input of the Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee, because we have those beaches, the beach accesses right across this, we've got a couple there, and the, the big one along the foreshore. Because we've had, well, and also to ECAC, I thought, because of the environment and climate change, because maybe it would be good to have these species like Gary Oak, Indian plum, vine maple on Bowen. Would they react better in a changing climate? And then also the Bowen Island Conservancy, who has the new park there and who are working to create a plan to keep it as a nature reserve with only native species. So I'm wondering if we could refer this out to those 3 groups, or is there a giant rush?
The applicant was definitely in a rush because they are looking, they're actively marketing the lots, and so their desire was to have the covenant placed, before the next September meeting, so that they could, like, if they make sales, that the covenant would be in place before they sell the lot, at which point they can't place the covenant on them.
Well, then I would like to move that the following species be struck from the list. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
May I ask a question for clarification first, please?
Okay, Allison, go ahead.
The table, if I'm reading it, is suggesting these plants be planted in but the first column in richer and wetter areas, and the second column in poorer and drier areas. It's not prohibiting them.
No, that's correct.
So my point is that these are recommended for planting, and some of the species on this list are not currently native to Bowen. So it would be introducing species to our ecosystems when we don't have them now.
Okay, just hold your thought there, Sue Ellen. I want to get some more people in here. Let's go to Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. My understanding is from the Cape people that the reason for this is to preserve these really very valuable for all the right reasons areas of the Cape, and they want to make sure that the whole woodland, the whole natural setting is preserved, because they see that as important for the sale of the other lots, so that people coming into the other areas, they're not coming into a logged out wilderness, but they're coming into an area where there's been enormous efforts to preserve the natural environment. So I support it. I also see it as being, I can't speak species for species. I see this as being a recommended list. I'm not sure, and I would ask Daniel, if it is a recommended list, who would be the approving agency for any such species? Here is a recommended list, well and good, and I take Sue Ellen's point. So who actually would agree from that recommended list what is and what isn't? Do you know who has control? I see the list, it's very clear. So who decides?
So, I mean, that's the list of replanting is required. And I mean, it recommends species, and it refers to a registered professional forester or biologist to confirm the most suitable species. So I think ultimately, if the municipality were enforcing the covenant and requiring replanting, ultimately it would be we would be requiring the replanting. But I think if they then replanted and said, well, I'm replanting, Gary oak that's on the recommended species, and we said, well, no, it's not native. Yeah. I don't know that we would be successful with that argument if it's on the list.
Because we're being asked to adopt this plan as attached to the covenant, right? So
The species list is attached to the covenant. Let's dig this a little further. Maureen, what have you got?
I support Sue Ellen's suggestion that it be referred to committees for their feedback. I don't see those lots at the Cape selling like hotcakes. I think it, as public comments and Sue Ellen have pointed out, this is just cropped up on our council agenda for consideration. I don't see that another month or so is going to result in any significant issues. So I would support a motion to that effect.
Okay, thank you. Allison?
I assume this covenant's been reviewed by our legal counsel, Daniel?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that it, Allison?
Yeah.
So Ellen, are you going to go again?
well, we haven't heard from David there. I see his hand is
Okay.
up.
David, go ahead.
And then I'll
please.
make a motion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sue Ellen's point. It's an interesting one, and Maureen's agreeing with that. But I am concerned about the timing. If some are sold, I would like this covenant to be in place. I also note if just before that table, the words are a registered professional forester or biologist can be consulted to confirm the most suitable species for the ecology of the areas to be planted. Now, trees could be cut down immediately upon selling something. It's going to take a while before any plantings would take place. And I'd be happy to have people have a look at this and give advice to the municipality. And we do have a line here saying a registered forester should be consulted. So I'd like to move forward with it, but have some committees spend some time having a look at this and provide us some recommendations. But I think we could move, as Daniel says, we can add any details and we'd be the ones in charge anyway. So we could deal with the replanting later if we need to make any changes. But it would be good, it seems to me, to get the covenant in place to avoid the excessive tree cutting. So I would support moving forward, but I would agree that it would be good to have people have a look at this.
Well, I agree with you. This is, I'd like to get the covenant in place, but I'd also like the concerns about these tree replanting, that schedule to be, and I don't think we have to send it back to the committees. That's going to be 3 months before we get any feedback from that. I was hoping that there would be a way that we could actually, move the recommendation and just put in something about the replacement tree list here, because it's apparently only this one page. It's of concern to us. I don't know how we would rate that up as long as the covenant, as long as the tree selection is approved by those certain agencies at the time or something. Would that be suitable for everybody or not?
Maybe
Those committees, yeah.
I have a question.
Liam, your hand's up there, and what are you thinking?
Oh, I was just thinking, if council wanted to advance the covenant, but have the list amended, it's entirely possible to go along the lines of what Councillor Fast was suggesting and just strike all non-native species from the list.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have to rely on our on-the-spot knowledge here tonight that could be something that is done affirmatively after the fact, where we say, okay, we are going to confirm that native species list to Bowen. And
Yeah, I hope, can you come up with anything? Is it just an addition onto the end of the recommendation? That
Yeah, it
this-
would be
that
something
the
to the effect
species
of
list- Yeah,
that we, that it be as authorized to enter into it as amended by striking, what is this schedule? Table 1, all native species within table 1.
All
Strike-
non-native.
non-native.
yes, striking all
Non-native.
non-native to
Sorry,
Bowen
I
Island.
thought I said that.
Yeah, yeah,
You missed a word.
yeah. That's a crucial word. Yeah.
And if you could say non-native.
All palm
Bowen,
trees out there.
Okay, hold on. Let's get, Sue Ellen, sorry.
if
You
it could
say
say
what?
non-native to Bowen Island,
Yeah,
because that's the specificity, I would be happy to support that. I love the idea of protecting forests. I just don't like the idea of changing the ecology just sort of by accident.
no, I agree 100%. Can you read us what you've got, Hope, if it's ready?
Can I just add one more,
Yeah, just the add-on part.
Gary? I'm
Yes,
looking at the section 10 of the FPC, and it refers to native trees should be planted. And
Yeah,
then
I
they
know.
refer to the list, so that clause is going to have to be changed as well, if you're talking about native to Bowen. And maybe with climate change, something that's native to Bowen now won't survive, and it would be better being replaced with something that wasn't native to Bowen, that would survive. So I'm quite happy of going ahead with the covenant the way it is. Everything that's in there is a native BC species.
well, it's native to BC, yeah, for sure. May not be native to Bowen Island, that's all.
No, but stuff that's native to Bowen Island may not survive climate change, and we'd be better to have a native to BC species that would.
That's why I
Right.
wanted to refer it to the different groups.
But
Well,
they're not experts on what's going to survive climate change, and
no,
these experts, these are native to BC plants.
can we change the wording? Okay, let's, Hope, what have you got at the end there?
So as amended by striking all non-native species to Bowen Island within table 1, page 8 of the covenant document.
Is it the covenant document or is it the report attached to the covenant? I'm afraid that's the Diamond Head report,
Schedule A,
Schedule A.
which I
And
think.
Schedule A is attached to the covenant document.
Thank you.
And
I'll
schedule,
move that.
okay, so that's on the schedule. The table 1 is the recommended species of trees and understory vegetation planting. That's the recommended ones. If we take the foreign to Bowen Island ones out of there, then, you know, it might still be recommended by somebody. Let somebody deal with it at the time. Okay, so we have a move by Sue Ellen.
Can I
David, you want to come in again?
Gary, I'd like to come in again, and I'm worried
Yeah.
about what Allison just said, and Sue Ellen talked about it early on, is, we know that the climate will be evolving, especially in that southwest coast. And it'll be more like a Gulf Islands climate and Gary Oak and some other species. I don't have the expertise, and we shouldn't be doing it right now, but I don't like the idea of just currently native to Bowen. It needs a bit more consideration than that.
Yeah.
Sorry to complicate things, but
No, absolutely. That's what we're here for. But Allison, one more comment, and Maureen.
Well, my problem is we've got a recommendation and we're having a change made to the recommendation, and I don't like the change. So can we vote on the change as a separate item as to whether or not we're going to amend the resolution by adding X clause? Because if I lose on that one, then I'll vote for the clause. But at this point, putting that amendment in there is causing me to want to vote against the recommendation, and I don't want to do that.
You know, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's the language, you know, if you read the language on the replanting requirements, if you read the language, it's covered that they will, you know, put stuff in there that is going to be suitable for the site ecologically, you know, and dealing with, it could be, you know, climate change and all the rest of it. So I think we leave it up to the professionals personally. And I don't think there's anything here that's gonna come back to haunt us. There's nothing bad in here, obviously.
So where are we process-wise right now? Sue
Well,
Ellen,
Sue Ellen
has a motion?
hasn't been
I
seconded.
moved it with
It
the
has not
amendment.
been seconded?
Not that I have reported, no.
No,
No, not seconded.
So in that case, I will move the motion as presented in our agenda package.
okay,
Council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to enter into the protective covenant attached to the staff report dated July 12, 2021 for 23 lots in Cape Roger Curtis, District Lot 1548, Group 1, New Westminster District Plan, BCP 43265.
So
thank you very much. And a second there somewhere, sorry. Did I get a second?
My motion, if it's moved and seconded and somebody wishes to move an amendment to it, then we can vote on that, amend it separately.
Okay, I will second that. And then any further conversation on this?
I'd like to move an amendment, and this
Okay.
is, so that last sentence, a registered professional forester or biologist can be consulted to confirm. What if we just, to deal with this issue of what the appropriate trees are, should be consulted to confirm the most suitable species? We just change the words.
Yeah, I like that. That's a friendly amendment. Allison, it's your motion.
Or must be consulted or whatever. Must be consulted, yeah.
Allison, it's your amendment.
Oh, just a minute, I'm flipping back through the resolution here. I'm not sure if that works or not because of section M in the covenant. In the event of any conflict between any provision of this agreement and the FPC, the terms of this agreement shall prevail and the FPC is without effect to the extent of the conflict. So I'm not sure what section are you amending, David?
Right before the table, Allison, the last sentence before the table.
Section 10,
On
page
section
7,
of
Yeah.
the Schedule A.
last sentence of the schedule, of section 10.
It should be will be consulted to confirm
Yeah,
most species.
Must is clearer.
yeah, must is clear, and it recognizes that it's actually a tricky list with the changing climate to figure out what you should be planting there.
I think leave
Okay,
the,
so I'm okay with you adding that clause to my resolution.
okay, that's a friendly amendment. Hope you have that.
Yes.
Okay, so any further discussion of Maureen, you still get your hand up.
Nothing further.
Okay, Allison, how about you? You're finished?
Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting to lower my hand.
And then I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
This is
Okay.
as amended.
Yeah.
As amended, yes.
I
And,
didn't see all hands.
okay, thank you. Opposed? No, I think we're clear there. Okay, that's great. Thank you for the conversation, everybody. That's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna move on to, that is the, that was the end of the consent agenda
Yeah.
conversation.
May I just
And we're
have
gonna-
a question? May I just
Yes.
ask a question? This really did come out of the blue. And I would like a bit more of a heads up when we have something like this going on the agenda. I mean, I appreciate that it may be urgent for the proponent, but it came as a surprise to members of the public and it came as a surprise to me. So going forward, if we could avoid surprises, I'd appreciate it. That was a question. That was just a mini.
Yeah, and that's a point well taken, Maureen. I think the thought was that this was gonna be a no-brainer to put a covenant on the forest there, but yes, I take your point. Thank you very much.
We're also recessing for the whole month of August.
Yeah, and most of September. Okay, so we're gonna move on to delegations, and thank you for your patience there, Tim. Tim Rhodes, Bowen Island Health Center Foundation, project update and request for a septic location. All right, Tim, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. I think this is my first meeting with you since COVID. So it's good to see you all. And thanks for the opportunity to bring you and the community up to date on our, hold on, my screen just changed here.
That's good.
Up to date on our progress at the health center. Before we get started, I just want to introduce the board of directors and our new executive director, because there's some new names here and some
Okay.
old ones.
You.
Bill Brown is the former CEO of BC Sugar. Sandra Guarcho is an employment lawyer with Bennett Jones. Sherry Johnson is a management consultant and entrepreneur, retired. Dr. Clive Jones is a dentist, retired. Jennifer McGowan, you all know, is a coordinator now with Emergency Health Management BC. Colleen O'Neill is the program director at Caring Circle. Gordon Orlico is the senior client partner at Corn Ferry. Dr. Lloyd Purdy is a physician and medical director at Reach Community Health Center. Greg Shepard is the CEO of the Western region of PharmaSave Drugs. Paul Stratford is our treasurer, is an entrepreneur and CFO of Ethical Bean Company. Maya Tesmaki is a senior strategist with the Michael Smith Foundation. And Maria Turnbull is the acting executive director at Vantage Point. We also have a new executive director who's going to do amazing things for us. Suzanne Sachi is a former management consultant and with healthcare operational planning experience. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sherry Johnson.
All right, thanks for that, Tim. That's great. Congratulations, everybody. You got a pretty good, awesome team going on there.
Thank you.
Sherry, over to you.
Thanks, Gary. And it is an awesome team. We're all very, very excited about what's ahead of us. We're planning to open the Bowen Island Health Center in the first quarter of 2023. It took us a lot of hard work, as you know, to get us here, and we still have lots of work ahead of us. So we wanted to just kind of briefly review for you where we've been and what we're working on right now. As you remember, it all really started in 2015 with a health needs and accessibility survey. Bowen was and still is in great need of more healthcare services on island. For example, many of our residents are delaying seeking care when they or their children are ill because of the challenges of simply going to the mainland for their health care. And that delay many times just makes things worse. And some of our elderly, unfortunately, are moving off island to be closer to the health services they need. So in 2015, we knew we needed to increase our on-island healthcare services, but we first needed to have the space on island to accommodate these services. Thus began our 4-year roller coaster ride to secure a location for a new purpose-built health center. We started with an offer to rent in a potential new multi-use building, but we were concerned with the long-term financial sustainability of that rental model. We were then offered a strata purchase in a planned multi-use building, but council at that time and the developer couldn't agree on some issues, so the developer pulled their plans. Then council offered us a long-term nominal lease on a 2/3 acre section of our community lands. However, that was unfortunately rescinded, and the new offer was a quarter of that, and we really didn't think it was enough for what the island needed. Luckily, we had a donor approach us and provided the capital to purchase 1/3 of an acre on the community lands, and we received title earlier this year. Now that we had the land, we needed to raise the capital for the building. We started 2020 at about 1.3 million. In the first quarter, we had 2 anonymous donors contribute $2.5 million. This show of support really turned the tide for us, and we continue to steadily move towards our target. In addition to the over 5.8 million we've raised for the building, our generous community has also donated $300,000 for the land purchase and another $351,000 for operating transition costs. And everyone here knows that this is really a record-breaking show of support from Bowen for a new health center. Now that we were confident we could deliver the building, we turned our attention to the operations on the inside of the health center. There were a wide range of options available for us. So with grants through the municipality and the community foundation, we retained consultants to assist us in determining the best model for Bowen. We conducted many, many hours of research and interviews with health centers throughout BC, various health agencies, and the Ministry of Health. The final report was a staggering 155 pages and contained over 80 recommendations. From this research, it was clear to us that the community health center model was the most appropriate. A community health center provides interprofessional primary care for a team-based approach to healthcare. It integrates services and programs in primary care, health promotion, and community well-being. It's community-centered and community-governed. It actively addresses the social determinants of health, such as access to healthcare, food security, childhood education and development, and demonstrates commitment to health equity and social justice. Using the insights and recommendations from the consultant's report, we developed our planning framework and initiatives. We've drafted 6 pathways to focus on over the next 3 to 5 years. Those include good governance, a home for healthcare, excellence in rural primary care, a collaborative workplace culture, community health leadership, and dependable communications. These pathways all support our goal of providing accessible healthcare to Bowen Island and our strategy of adopting and implementing the community health center model. And of course, they all sit firmly on our set of values. Our plans for health services in the new health center include primary care and rural urgent care, allied professionals such as physiotherapy and mental health, expanded life lab hours, a full service dental practice, caring circle for healthcare system navigation, other health services such as hearing and vision testing and chronic disease management, including clinics such as for diabetes, COPD, and asthma, and also Vancouver Coastal Health programming for such things as immunization, nutrition, and early childhood clinics. As you can see from this table, our plan for primary care is to staff the health center with GPs, nurse practitioners, registered nurses, licensed practice nurses, and medical office assistants. This level of staffing will allow us to offer primary care services from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday to Friday, Saturday hours from 9 to 1:30, and after hours rural emergency for things such as stitches, so that people can stop using super glue when they get cut really badly. We won't be able to open the health center immediately with this level of service, but this is really what we'll be working towards and hope to get there as soon as we can after our grand opening. Let me give you just a peek inside the health center now, so you can get a sense of the activity that's going to be going on there. You can see here where people will enter into the waiting room area with reception. They may go from here to the lab for testing. They may have an appointment with a mental health consultant. They may go to one of our 4 examination rooms. We'll also have room there for our community paramedics. We'll have 2 procedures rooms, one adjacent to the ambulance bay for triage. Our executive director, of course, will be housed there, spaces for nurses, a meeting or breakout room, flex community room for those programs. And since it's 2 levels, we of course will have an elevator. The ground floor is where our brand new dental, full service dental practice will be, as well as plenty of room available for other services such as physiotherapy. Downstairs will also be the staff room, a quiet room. That's where all our mechanical and janitorial will be. So you can see it's going to be buzzing all the time and resolving all the needs and issues that folks on Bowen have. So we're very, very excited about being able to offer this to the island. Our work is continuing. We're ready to sign with a construction management firm and break ground in September. We've recently hired, as Tim mentioned, an absolutely outstanding executive director, Suzanne, who now has a very extensive priorities list around facility and operations, startup and management. We are also seeking multi-year operating funding by working with the Ministry of Health and other health authorities and agencies. And we're actively right now searching for additional primary care physicians to bring to Bowen as soon as we can, as well as other health services. Now, as I just mentioned, we're preparing to sign with a construction management company to break ground in September. It's really essential to get started on excavation and foundations prior to the rainy season in order to meet our projected opening date of Q1 2023. However, we have a few road bumps that we need your help with right away. Easements, diesel storage for emergency preparedness, and the mother of all speed bumps, wastewater management. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tim now and let him explain the details.
Thank you. As you saw earlier in Sherry's presentation, we went from 2/3 of an acre in our original planning to down to 1/3 of an acre. And we are now too small. This site proved to be too small to provide access to the health center for vehicles. So we've had to get a number of easements from the municipality, including the one to the north on the fire hall site, as well as a stormwater runoff on the fire hall site, and one to the east with the future Birch site, and again to the south on municipal lands. These cost sharing work to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 on the fire hall site, and 50-50 with Birch on the other two easements, but with Birch's future being unknown in terms of when they may proceed, we're going to have to renegotiate cost sharing for all of the easements. Basically, it's going to be 50-50 for the fire hall easements, and we're going to have to shoulder 100% of the cost for the Birch and municipal easements. Lost my spot here, of course. We also are going to want to have latecomer agreements made so that we can recoup some of this extra cost as those lands are put into use. Staff has indicated that those agreements are necessary before we start work, especially on the property to the south of our site. And as we intend to break ground in September, we need the agreements finalized. And so we're asking that revisions of the cost sharing agreements for easements be a priority for staff.
Okay.
Diesel storage. We are planning to have enough diesel storage on site to run for 72 hours in the event of a outage, which does occasionally happen on Bowen Island. However, we have not got room on the site for the kind of storage we would need to run for something like 2 weeks if there was a major event. We are being built to a post-disaster standard, so we intend to be there and standing in the event of an emergency. And it would be nice to have access to enough fuel to actually operate with electricity. Again, no room on our site for the storage, so we're asking for an easement on the fire hall site to accommodate extra storage, basically where the fire hall will be storing theirs. Without this easement, when the need for a health center would be most critical, we would be without power. So again, we're asking staff to confirm that an easement for storage on the fire hall site will be granted and prepare the necessary documents. And now wastewater, everyone's favorite subject. There is currently no assurance that the Snug Cove sewer system has capacity for the health center. And if the health center build has to wait for sewer treatment plant expansion, our opening could be delayed from 2023 to 2025 or 2026. Having raised $6 million from a very generous community, we don't want to disappoint, and we're sure council doesn't want to disappoint either. Staff has indicated to us that they won't have a determination on capacity until sometime in September. We are scheduled to break ground in September, but we can't really in good faith sign with a construction management company if we don't know how to deal with wastewater. So after recovering a bit from the surprise and shock, we turned our attention to mitigation and alternatives. And it seems that a septic field on the remainder land A would solve our problem. Staff has told us that the fire hall and birch sites are not going to be suitable for this. So we have zeroed in on remainder lots A. So we're prepared to install a septic system and field to handle the wastewater until a sewer access is available. And of course, if we are able to get into the sewer system, we wouldn't have to do any of this, but we need to have it in place in case. So with no room for the septic field on our site, we're going to have to bear the expense of designing, installing, and decommissioning the septic system on the municipal site. We would hope that in consideration for this unanticipated and substantial expense, the municipality might consider an equivalent reduction in sewer access fees when the sewer becomes available. Work on the health center needs to begin in September in order to meet our 2023 opening date. So we're asking council, because you don't sit during August, and as the mayor mentioned, you have UBCM in September, we're asking you to consider the following resolution at this meeting so that the health center can proceed with construction. And I'll just read our proposed motion to you. Whereas there may not be capacity in the current Snug Cove sewer system treatment plant to accommodate the planned health center at 1037 Miller Road, and whereas council does not wish to delay the start of construction of the health center in September 2021, be it resolved that council directs staff to consult with the Bowen Island Health Center Foundation to identify an appropriate location on remainder lot A for a septic field for use by the health center as an interim wastewater management solution. We need staff and council's help to resolve these three issues immediately if we're to meet our opening date. We are the largest successful fundraising campaign in the island's history, and we think we deserve to proceed without delay to break ground in September of this year and open the much needed health center in Q1 of 2023. That's it. That's our ask. And I want to thank you all for the time and your attention. And we're happy, of course, to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tim. And it's very exciting what's going on, and obviously the timing is very critical for you. So has council got any questions at this point in time? Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, Tim, just on the diesel storage, I'm just curious, with the fire hall sites and you guys being like right next to one another, is there any coordination being done on diesel storage? Or I'm even thinking on a generator, for instance, like it would make sense that you're both next to each other, you're both emergency services. Is there collaboration happening, or are you guys completely separate?
Well, there was discussion of collaboration on a generator. Unfortunately, the fire hall was further ahead of us. And as some of you may know, with COVID, ordering thing, large equipment like that has to be done well in advance. So by the time we were in the game, that had already been ordered by the fire hall and isn't large enough for both facilities. Now we are in a place now to talk about perhaps shared diesel. We need to talk with the fire chief to see whether that makes sense for them or not, or whether we should have two separate storages.
Yeah, because the diesel is going to spoil over time, so you always have to be ditching it and getting new stuff in there. So that's a big cost and pollution and all that. So, okay, thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, Maureen.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew, and thank you, Sherry and Tim, for your presentation. It's really exciting to get to this point where there are only 3 bumps to realizing the project. My questions are probably more for staff than for the Health Center Foundation. With the so the 3 areas, the easements, the diesel storage, the wastewater. With the easements, what Tim described was that they would pick up 100% of the costs, rather than costs being shared with the Muni and with Birch. Is there the expectation on the part of municipal staff that the Health Center Foundation would be picking up 100% of the costs?
I can answer that question. So, yeah, Councillor Nicholson, the intention all along was to have cost sharing for the easement to the north. So that's through the fire hall site. And so that's providing access to the back side of the health center and the Birch facility. And so that would have been shared 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The southern easement, access easement, again provides access to the back of the fire or the health center site and access to Birch, but no current use identified for any of the remainder lot of lot 3. And so that was agreed that it would be a 50-50 cost share between Birch and the health center. And so with Birch not moving forward at this point in time, when Tim and I spoke about it, we discussed that the north easement, which was 1/3, 1/3, made sense to go 50-50. So the municipality would step up to pay 50% of it and the health center 50%. But we would have that latecomer fee if Birch did go ahead. And then same thing for the south one, because now Birch is not moving forward at the same time, that the health center would take on 100% of it, and the remainder would be, if Birch did come online, the latecomer fee would cover off 50% of that cost.
And what are we talking about in terms of money here?
It depends on the level of the access in terms of the quality of the access, but it could be anywhere from, for the southern access, it could be anywhere from 20,000 to 60,000. You know, if we're talking about a really roughed in ready access versus like a much higher quality access. And you could go even north of that too, in price. And similar pricing for the north end, and that will be a little better finishing, and that's in part because the fire hall is there as well.
Okay, thank you. That helps with context.
If I interject, Maureen, our civil engineers have suggested that the South Road would be about $75,000 when it finished to a state where you want your health center guests to be coming and going on it.
Okay. Okay. I don't have questions on the diesel storage. Rob covered that off. with the wastewater, did they ask for the remainder of the remainder piece in Lot A? How big is that? It looks tiny on the map, but how large is it?
The remainder lot's fairly large in that it extends up behind the RCMP station.
Yeah, but the piece you're requesting for the septic?
Oh,
field?
well, frankly, we don't know how big that is. We need to get our septic designer involved, and we need to test the soils and see if that just seems to be an appropriate location if it works. But I have no idea if it's an appropriate size or not. We don't have a lot of water use. I'd say we're about the same as a large home, so it doesn't need to be extensive, the field.
Yeah,
Good
I mean,
point.
the actual water use may be more significant than a large home, considering the number of that it's one or two. We're in that ballpark, but so it's not a lot. But the field would be similar to a large homes field, and we would need to do some walkarounds and land on the right spot so that it didn't hinder any future development opportunities of the remainder lot and or birch going in. So you'd want to make sure that whatever you did, the health center could continue to operate while any other future development opportunities were able to get going. And those are logistics that we can probably sort through, but the location is yet to be determined as terms of the best spot.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, how many hookups to the sewer system would the health center be the equivalent of? Is it one hookup or?
It would be equivalent to, as Tim said, a very large home, or you could say two.
Okay, so that's that. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, David?
Thank you, Gary. Well, Maureen answered a lot of my asked a lot of my questions, and Liam answered them. Basically, we've got some recommendations before us, and we need to on anything like this, we'd normally get a staff report so we could understand the ramifications of any decision. And so Liam has given us a bit of a staff report. It's to look at something like this, and obviously we want things to move forward. Obviously we want all the whereas at the top of Tim's recommendations, we agree with, but really need to understand the ramifications. So I'm not quite sure how to proceed. I guess I want to turn that back to Liam. I mean, what kind of a process? Okay, the diesel seems pretty straightforward. It's, the fire hall has diesel in the back corner. It would seem, surely it would be easy enough to share that in some way or another. The easements, Liam, you've pretty well answered that, but it's the septic that requires, that land is rocky. Some of it's used for parking. There's all sorts of issues around trying to come up with a solution there. So I'm going to turn it back to Liam, please, to help us figure out how we might proceed here to help move this forward, but do so in a thoughtful way.
Okay. I'm just going to go to Allison before we go back to Liam. Allison, what have you got for a comment?
Well, I guess knowing a little bit more of the detail, I think the only thing we're being asked to vote on is identifying a piece of land for the septic field. And conceptually, I don't have a problem, but I guess I'd like a little more detail. And I know we're talking about a special meeting to deal with a fourth reading for a bylaw. No, so I don't know whether could we defer and have a discussion at that meeting rather than making, I really don't like making decisions on the fly without a staff report. And, knowing what the population equivalent is, because that's the new methodology we're using for the sewer system, I think. So, or maybe that's for the water system, I'm mixing them up. But if we could somehow, an answer in the next week, is that to 10 days? Because your time constraint is signing your contract with the construction management, which you haven't done yet, but you want to do before the beginning of September, or you want to do it by when?
We'd like to have done it a couple of weeks ago. But, and the reason why we want to do that is because it is a construction management contract, and they're going to be very involved in putting together some real preliminary pricing for us. And they're not really prepared to start down that road until they have a signed agreement.
Yeah.
So we're in a kind of the sooner the better situation, certainly. I do believe that there will be, given the testing we've done on our site with respect to the soil and rock and everything, I do believe there may be certainly adequate soil for a septic field in the location there or some other location on that site. But as we've said, we'll look at that with staff.
Yeah, if I might just pipe in here just for a second, these are all very easily doable. I mean, the easements are just, it's a matter of just figuring out, you know, how it's going to be split up, and there's going to be the latecomer in there. The diesel storage, I don't see it's going to be a huge amount of diesel. And this septic, I took a little walk around there, and this isn't going to require a huge septic field. It'll probably be a stage 2 system, and it's like one run. So there's a lot of bedrock over there, but it's certainly doable. It's just a matter of getting in there with a geotech or something, or the professional, and just saying where you want to put it, and if that's you know, if we can find a place for it. I think the sooner we start talking, the sooner things are going to start to happen. And Liam, I'll go over to you on that and see how you want to do it. I know there's also staff time concerns and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I agree, Mayor. I think moving to a septic for an interim solution is really feasible. I think we could probably find a suitable location. But I do want to be careful to not impinge any future opportunities for birch or other development opportunities. And so that's something that we could structure in an agreement, and so as to ensure that if there was a future development opportunity that required the septic system to be abandoned, that at that point in time, there'd have to be a hookup to the sewer system, providing we have capacity.
Yeah,
we should have capacity by then. So we could structure a legal agreement in that fashion. I do think the septic is the biggest hurdle. Diesel, something we can sort through. The fire chief and I have spoken about it. Not a concern there. We can sort that out. Easements, we can renegotiate those agreements and get those sorted. But yeah, septic, I think, is a very reasonable approach to this challenge, and I think we can work that out. I don't know if we, to Councillor Morris's question about bringing it back at the special meeting that we were proposing for resolving the use of public spaces bylaw, we were aiming for Thursday for that. So we may not be able to bring this back that quickly. But I think that what we might consider amending the recommendations so that staff are directed to work with the health center to establish an appropriate septic field location and do the necessary work to ensure new and necessary easements and legal agreements are in place, and basically doing all of that background work to then bring it back in September for finalization. Or we may have, I think we're going to have at least 1 or 2 special council meetings before our next September scheduled meeting. That would give staff and the health center sufficient time to do the necessary work of siting the field and drawing up the necessary easements and arrangements that would be needed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Liam. I just want to make sure that we do start forward here, and there are going to be a couple of meetings over August and that sort of thing, and if we can fit one in before we certainly don't want to wait till the end of September if we don't have to. And if we can get something done before that, we certainly, that would be much better for everybody concerned. Comments, Michael?
Gary, I like Liam's wording. My question would be to Tim, if we and to Sherry, if we come up with a wording that Liam has just suggested, does that give you the certainty you need to move ahead? Because I know that is really what you're asking for. What you're really asking for, allowing for all the bumps, is a sufficient certainty from us from this meeting to proceed and go ahead. So I really sort of take to what Liam has said. My question to you is, does that satisfy your needs?
I don't believe it does, unfortunately, because there is the possibility of everything going sideways at some point in the future. If in September, council, for whatever reason, decides they don't like this idea, and we've had to wait that long, first of all, we've missed our opportunity to get into the ground. And secondly, we still have no confirmation that we're going to be able to deal with wastewater. And finally, we can't sign with our construction manager, and we're now looking at delay.
Then I hope Liam won't mind. I'm not trying to bounce this ball backwards and forwards, but is there something in you looked at the request made and the motion proposed. Is there something we can do to provide this certainty and also to satisfy the points you've raised?
Liam, do you see a way forward that can sort of cut back the time on this?
I don't know that what I proposed was so very different than what was on the screen from Tim. I'm looking at that right now. What was proposed by Tim, Tim, please don't take any offense. I'm just trying to make sure we get the wording right. What's been proposed in the presentation says, be it resolved that council directs staff to consult with the Bowen Island Health Center Foundation to identify an appropriate location on remainder lot A for a specific field for use by the health center as an interim wastewater management solution. That's basically what I was saying, your resolution perhaps didn't go quite so far as to say that to identify, so all it currently says right now is to identify an appropriate site. If we want to get more specific and add more surety, that means we have to go beyond identifying an appropriate site. We have to identify it and
make sure it's going to work
and allow for it to happen, and implement the necessary easements. So we're going to require that there is an easement, and that and that there's an agreement in place of how that will all carry forward. And so what I would like to propose is that we do work together to find a site that works for the septic, but that we aren't fully approving that location at this point. We can't approve the location at this point in time because we don't have one. So I just would not be, I guess I will do what it takes to have staff work with you to find a solution, but I don't think we should leave it so wide open at this point in time.
Yeah, and
because we don't have any
specificity. To Liam's point, we also have to consider if there is some suitable ground there, we got to make sure we get your septic in the right place, because if Bert shows up and says we also need septic, we got to make sure that we have the capacity then to do that also on the same spot, because it's going to be quite marginal to get that in there. So there's other little bits and pieces that have to be considered. I think what Liam's saying here, Maureen, your hand up again.
Yes, Tim, I was wondering if you could show your resolution again, please.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, it's on the,
And while
Actually,
he's doing
that's
it's on
that,
the computer too.
it's in our agenda package.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'd like to see it on screen. And this is a question for Liam. Liam, would this resolution with the addition of to identify and confirm an appropriate location, would that work for you?
That would give more certainty for the health center too, and for myself as well, to know that we can work with the health center to identify a location and confirm that location without having to come back to council for approval of that location.
Right. And would that work for you, Tim?
Yes, that's it's the timing of coming back for approvals that is worrisome to us, just
Yeah.
in terms of how things have to move forward for us.
Yeah. So I'd like to move this resolution as amended. Could I get a second?
Could I, I'm sorry to do this, but could I add, if we want to streamline this one step further,
Yeah.
I would say to add in and establish all the necessary easements and legal agreements to implement the septic system.
Okay, I'll accept that as additions to the amendment.
And I'll
Anybody prepared to second it?
I'm happy.
Yes,
to-
I'll certainly second it, Maureen.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And Hope, can you just sort of read what's evolved here, please?
So I'm still having trouble with this being rammed through at a meeting when we've not really had time to consult with our public works manager. And what's wrong with not deferring this to Thursday?
I don't think that we'll get, I've talked with Patrick about it in brief. I don't know that we'll get much more between now and Thursday. But I take your point, Councillor Morris. I think that this is something that we've been thinking about for a while, so it's at a staff level. And Tim and I met, I believe it was last week, to discuss. And so it's not at a staff level, it's not net new. But for me, the thing that I'm looking out for too is the assurance that whatever agreement we put in place doesn't hinder the opportunity for Birch or other future development to go forward. And so long as the health center board is okay with having that kind of clause in there, that then I'm fine with moving forward in this direction. And I think it takes the pressure off and enables the project to advance.
I didn't hear that clause being added to the resolution. Let's hope God.
Establish protocols. Hope.
Therefore,
what
be
do
it
you got?
resolved that council directs staff to consult with the Bowen Island Health Center Foundation to identify and confirm an appropriate location on remainder lot A for a septic field for use by the health center as an interim wastewater management solution, and to establish all necessary easement and legal agreements required to implement the interim septic field.
Yeah.
Say anything about and ensure that there will be adequate land for Birch or for them to use have a septic field as well.
Well, I think that's understood.
Yes, I agree.
Gary?
Yeah.
Just two questions for clarification. One is because I'm sort of having trouble figuring out where this chunk of land would be. And my only concern would be if there's going to be significant or tree removal happening for the septic field. So just maybe a comment.
Just
the
only thing I saw in there that would there'd probably be a couple of old beat up alders and stuff that are probably max of about 8 inches, something like that. Pretty scruffy stuff. Nothing significant. No big trees. And that's the way I read it, but I'm certainly not the geotech on it. Yeah. Sue Ellen?
Gary, I just had a second question for maybe to Tim. Tim, so the thinking here is if you do not get agreement, if you don't get assurance to go into a new sewer system, you're going to build this, or are you thinking we got to build this either way? We're going to build it basically, or are you going to wait till you hear back from us on that?
No, we wouldn't need to start building it until certainly staff has finished their calculations about whether or not there's room in the sewer. If there's room in the sewer, that's obviously the preferable solution. This is just in case.
Yeah, because it's going to be extra cost for you guys, right? So, yeah, okay.
And Gary, I don't believe there's any trees where the access easement is on the south side at all, running all the way back to the birch lot, because we took them all out.
Yeah, but we can't be on the birch lot. We've got to be further.
No.
We got to be further south than that. There's no question.
Yeah.
Okay, Sue Ellen.
Thank you. I haven't said much because most of my questions have been answered, and I'm in support of moving in this direction. And I'm not going to talk about trees. I'm going to talk about where the current library septic field is now. It's sort of proof of concept. You can have a septic field up there. And as I understand it, the in September is also around the time when the library will be hooked up. Anyway, it seems to me there might be a little more space up there and possibly with the creativity of staff and that things could get juggled around. And I know there's at least one big pump and a few big septic tanks down there at the library that they fundraised for as well. So, but I expect it's not worth digging them up. Anyway, I wish everybody well, and this is going in the direction I wanted to just chime in because people were probably wondering, what is she thinking? Thank you.
Probably, yeah. Sean, that's a good point. And when you bring that up, I think there was the primary field for the library, but there was always talk about a secondary field there, and that's certainly some which might be available. I don't know, but it also might be on Metro land, so that might not work out. Allison, final comment?
I've given up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is everybody happy with the recommendation here, the way it stands?
Yeah, just see it again on screen.
Yeah. Well, did you rewrite the other one, Hope, or do you want to just say it again?
Hang on, I'll just screen share just one moment.
We're getting so spoiled these days by able to see it on the screen. And
can you see this?
Yeah, it's coming.
Well, what we see is started screen sharing, double click to enter full screen mode. There it is, but it's very small.
Oh, okay.
Can't have everything.
There you go. That's good.
There you go.
Oh,
and up a bit.
Some meetings I've been at lately, they've been putting these in the chat.
Oh, yeah, okay.
How does that look?
Up a little
That's
more.
good.
Up a little more. Well,
I can't.
Well, all I can see is the whereases.
Okay, well, how about I
Delete
just
the
read it?
whereases,
just okay.
and we can see the resolution.
There you go.
Well, it didn't work out so well. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hope. That's what I understood the motion to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded, and there's no further discussion. I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, and opposed? I see 0 opposed. All right. Thank you very much, Health Center delegation.
Thank you.
That's great, and try to move this thing along as fast as we can. But you know how the pace is.
Thank you so much. This means a lot to us.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all your good work. It's fantastic. Can't wait.
Good night, Sheree. Good night, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're going to move on to business arising from the minutes, and we've got the Grafton Lake Affordable Home Ownership Housing Agreement. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Daniel, over to you.
I'll be recusing myself, given that I may have an interest in applying for home ownership in the future.
All right, thank you very much, Maureen.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. So I just have a brief presentation to go over this this item. Just trying to find my screen. Okay, have you seen that okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So I have here tonight to present to you the Grafton Lake Housing Agreement, a development for affordable home ownership. So just by way of background, so in 2018, Council adopted Bylaw 440, which created comprehensive development zone 21 for the Grafton Lake development. As a condition of that rezoning, 35 units were to be provided in terms of a housing agreement, so 25 rental units and 10 ownership units. And the 10 ownership units are to be provided in the first phase of the subdivision on the north side of Grafton Road in the proposed Lot 3. So you see they're just south of the road end. So staff and the developer have worked to craft a housing agreement, and we've sought council input on several policy questions that would form sort of the basis of the housing agreement. So these questions were referred to the Housing Advisory Committee. And so what I'm bringing you today is just the Housing Advisory Committee's responses to those questions, and then looking for council direction to finalize drafting the housing agreement bylaw, at which point we would return with the bylaw itself for council's consideration and readings. So the first question, and probably the biggest and like the largest one that shapes it, is the qualified purchaser criteria. So who is eligible to buy the units? The next being the purchaser selection. So how are we choosing the people? And this is sort of on the assumption as we go forward with housing on Bowen that of the 10 units, we are anticipating that we would be oversubscribed for the 10 units. And so thinking in that case, how are we selecting purchasers? If we do all this work and we go out and there's 10 people who want to buy it, it's maybe a simpler question. So the next would be the resale price. And so how is the affordability captured over the lifetime of the unit? How are subsequent purchasers selected? And then finally, question about the Cove Bay water contribution. So who makes the contribution to the Cove Bay system? So I'll go through, and what I have essentially here is I have the Housing Advisories Committee response to each of these questions. So I brought an earlier report to council that gave some basic overview of the questions, and this was just looking specifically what the Housing Advisory Committee had said. So they were interested in a broad selection criteria and looking at, okay, ways to quantify attachment to Bowen and people's need for affordable housing, looking at potential for multiple criteria and possibly weighing the different factors. So you'd say, okay, well, you live on Bowen, you get, or you work full time on Bowen, and that's a different scoring criteria that can be added up. But looking for transparency and flexibility in how we do it going forward. I don't know if does council want me to go through overview, and then I can circle back for any questions councilors have?
Yeah, I think so. I know.
Okay. In terms of purchaser selection, the Housing Advisory Committee had recommended that we actually form a committee. So the developer could nominate one person and the municipality could nominate one, and then a member of the community could be selected to sort of go over applications that we have, but the other step being that the applications first be anonymized. So they're submitted to someone who is reviewing them to make sure it's all correct and in place, and replacing the name then with a number or some anonymous identifications for the committee to go through. In terms of affordability going forward, so in this case, there's two main ways that it's done. So it's either done by capturing the initial purchase price and increasing by a standard such as CPI over time, where it increases slowly at the rate of inflation. The other model that is used is by capturing as a percent below assessed value. So to sell it, you would get an appraisal done and you would sell it at that same percent below. And there's sort of pluses and minuses to both approaches, and the Housing Advisory Committee recommended going with the same as the Valterra model, where it increases at this rate of inflation. The fourth one is in terms of resale, so purchaser selection. The Housing Advisory Committee said not to maintain a wait list over time, but make sure we're advertising when one comes up for sale, thinking that if 10 are purchased, it may be several years before any of them resale. So we know Valterra, there hasn't been a resale in the affordable units, and so holding a wait list for people is sort of giving false hope for people when there's not adequate turnover. And the fifth one, in terms of making the contribution to the Cove Bay water contribution, the Housing Advisory Committee agreed with the staff recommendation that the cost of that Cove Bay expansion would be part of the construction price of the unit, and so would go into the purchase price of the unit. So council is just looking for, our staff is looking for council direction to prepare the housing agreement bylaw based on the principles outlined in the staff report. And I'll stop sharing from there.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Just one point. This is for purchase only, and there'll also be a rental agreement also, right?
Yes, so
As
in future phases,
Yeah.
as the development goes across on the south side of the main road, the future phases are slated to be rental.
So we're not dealing with that part right now. So you're saying, okay, that's great. Thank you. And I'm looking for hands. Or else is everybody happy? Allison and then Rob.
So we're talking about 10 purchase units?
10 purchase units.
And so all the rest of the so the purchase units are only going to be on the north side of the road, this first phase.
Yes.
Okay. And are they going to ask the applicants to pre-qualify before they put their name on the list so that you know they can afford to buy it?
That was part of the Belterra process. I think that's still in our draft housing agreement bylaw. And I would assume that, yeah, that would be the process going forward, is that by the time we're getting to the point of selecting the 10, that we have assurances that, you know, those 10 people can purchase the units.
And I'm just a little confused about the words attachment to Bowen. Is that what the criteria is going to be, that broad, very subjective term? Or are you going to have, you know, because we had a policy developed that was approved by council a long time ago for pre-purchase, for purchase property waiting lists. And you had to have not have owned a house for the previous 5 years, not have, and either be an employee or a retiree or somebody. So actually setting out the type of criteria. So
no, we would put the actual like type of criteria. I think the housing advisory committee was using that as a catch-all for the idea that it could be that you live on Bowen, or you know, you work on Bowen, or you've previously lived on Bowen, but you've been priced out with something that they wanted to capture. Was that, you know, I lived there for 10 years and my house got sold and I had to move, but I want to come back. That would be, you know, some way of making that eligible. And I will say too, the one major disagreement I think the Housing Advisory Committee had with the previous criteria was about the idea of having owned a home in the last 5 years. Yeah. And thinking that in terms of that was penalizing like that form of capital versus somebody who, instead of owning a home 5 years ago, owned the same amount of stocks or whatever the case may be, that the need for affordable housing was there. And it wasn't that they happened to own real estate 4 years ago as opposed to a different form of investment, but it was looking at, you know, what was the need for housing.
Allison, you happy?
no,
Okay.
I think the pre-owned criterion, maybe you shorten the length of time, but you know, somebody can afford to buy it because they got lots of investments from having sold another house, but their income isn't high, but the person who hasn't got any investments and doesn't have high income, they should get first dibs.
Yeah, I think the process is going to be reasonably subjective, though, I would think. I mean, these are very broad criteria.
If I could just add, sorry to interject and bud the line. I just wanted to touch on that one particular criteria, and I don't think we want to presuppose what a person's personal situation may have been for them to have become no longer a homeowner or property owner. So I think that's what I wasn't at the committee meeting, but that's my understanding of that's where it was coming from.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Rob?
Yeah, sort of a bit on Allison and Liam's sort of train of thought on the only concern that I can see is the selection committee with subjective and objective findings and all that, and whether we're going to have one of our staff involved in that selection committee. I don't know if that's the best route to go with that, but I mean, well, maybe Dan, you can comment on that. I mean, my original thought was going to be there was going to be some basic tenets that were going to need to be met, like, you know, need for housing and whatnot, and that people will be put into those people would apply, and then it would be sort of a lottery basically for 10 people instead of us specifically selecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and not the other people. And it was going to be a bit of a gate for people that can apply to buy these properties, need to have these conditions, and then it would be a lottery from there. Any thought on that? Because that's what I thought originally was the plan.
I mean, that is, I think, one of the options I brought forward when I brought this to council before. And that was what was in my mind, was like, okay, we just set a bar and everyone who passes it, okay, and then we do it. The Housing Advisory Committee wanted essentially like further ability to say, well, actually, you know, this was the bottom bar, but then when we look at it, well, there's 10 people who need it more than people who just, you know, so it is a hard thing. And it's a hard thing too when we're talking about home ownership and, you know, people qualifying for a mortgage and making payments, and, you know, there's sort of a narrower bar of people who are eligible, because you're saying, well, people, you need this much to be able to afford it, and then, but we don't want people with more than this much, and it's sort of it's hard to get that threshold right.
I think it'd be very difficult and problematic. I like the original, sort of what you suggested earlier, and that would be my suggestion for that moving forward.
Thanks, Rob. Sue Ellen, and then David.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm generally in support of this recommendation, and I'd be pleased to move it in a minute. I recognizing that we recently passed the equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. I know that's just for municipal operations, but to me, I would prefer to be inclusive about this and not just slant it to people who have been fortunate enough to be previous homeowners. It seems to me
slanted to them.
And so I'm going to, I'm happy to move the motion. I'm not hearing a whole lot of discussion, but may I?
I'm going to send it over to David, and then we'll send it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I'm fine with this. All the questions I had have been raised. I just want to say that I do agree with, I guess it was Liam's point, that I don't want people to be disqualified because in the past they owned a home and their circumstances have changed in some way or another. So I'm in support of the direction that this is going. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, okay, all the hands are down. Thank you. And Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Sure. I just mean I just don't want anybody to be excluded. My motion is that council directs staff to prepare a housing agreement bylaw based on the principles outlined in the staff report dated July 13th, 2021.
All right, I'll second that. And further discussion? I don't see any hands. I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. I think we got everybody there, don't we? Did you get everybody home?
Yeah, I think I saw Councillor Morse's hand in the corner.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Even if I didn't put it up, I'm counted as voting in favor.
Yes, okay. It just makes it easier so we don't get confused. Now we're going to move on here to the hazardous area DP area draft report. What I'm thinking about is if we move to 7.2 here, or sorry, 8.1, which is a library update. We're running a little bit behind, and I see both Tina and Susan are here. And would anybody object if we kind of move that up to the staff reports there so they can get on their way?
Sounds good.
Okay, I don't see anybody objecting. All right. Welcome. Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Item 6.2. Sorry, I have something stuck in my throat. I believe we have the student from UBC who is here to present the findings. Daniel, can you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah, Mike is here as well for item 6.2.
Okay. Okay.
I'm
Well,
just wondering if we want to stick to the schedule.
Let's go to 6.2 and then we'll go down to 8.1. How's that? Sorry about that, Tina and Susan. And I didn't realize he was here to do that. Okay, that's awesome. So 6.2 is the hazardous areas DP area draft report findings. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Okay, first to you, Daniel, and then you can pass it on.
Thank you, Mayor Ander and Council. So what I have for you tonight is I have a short presentation to tell you about the hazardous areas development permit area and just where we are overall in the project, where we are in the work plan. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Mike Turley, who is the UBC PhD candidate who has prepared the draft report that is with you tonight.
Can we get Maureen back?
Ooh. Yes. Hope, can you message Maureen?
You know, what's funny is I messaged her to say I would remember this time, and look, I forgot.
Thank
Can't
you.
trust me. Cannot be trusted.
Jeez. Forgot
Yeah.
about that too.
They say it's baby brain, and I think it's real.
You should have been listening in anyway.
He's coming in just a moment.
Okay, I will just start giving the background.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we're presenting today a draft report findings for the Hazardous Area Development Permit Area project. So council approved the work plan for this project in September of 2020. And so that work plan, the first 3 steps to gather spatial data, establish areas of high vulnerability to hazards, and define trigger for application of the DP. That's essentially what's in the draft report that is with you tonight. And I'll just add, the recommendation is to add a stage of consultation after this C. So originally in the work plan, the public engagement would be done in step G. So after the bylaw documents are drafted and the permit application process is prepared. And so what staff recommending is to take this draft report for that initial consultation stage before moving on to the drafting of the actual bylaw itself.
Okay.
And then just further, so council in March approved the funding for this work plan. And so staff, based on that funding, applied for funding as well under the UBC Sustainability Scholars Program and hired Mike Turley, who's a PhD candidate in Earth Sciences, who's provided the draft report that is with you tonight. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk you through that report.
All right, welcome, Mike. Thank
Hey,
you.
thank you for having me.
Report.
Let me just get this going. Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Mike Turley. I'm a PhD student in the geography department currently, but I have a degree in geology, so this is why I'm interested. Today, I'm going to focus on the hazardous areas development permit area by outlining the best practices and also the geotechnical analyses that I performed. So the purpose for this was to identify potentially hazardous areas on Bowen Island and to eventually support the creation of a hazardous areas DPA. To do that, I have 5 steps outlined here that I will quickly go over. So first, I will summarize the conditions on Bowen Island relevant to hazards. Second, I will summarize the best practices research that's relevant to hazard assessments. Third, we'll go over the geotechnical analyses that I performed to identify the hazardous areas and to map them. Fourth, I will present this map for review by council. And finally, I will quickly go over the suggested triggers and exemptions. So Bowen Island has a wet coastal climate and mountainous terrain. The island is composed primarily of sedimentary and igneous rock, overlain by thin, discontinuous soils. And the undeveloped areas are primarily densely forested. These conditions make the island potentially susceptible to several different hazards, and I've broken them down into 4 different categories. These 4 categories are landslides, such as debris flows or rockfall, flooding from lakes and wetlands, stream erosion and flooding, and finally coastal erosion and flooding. So I'll talk about each of those separately here. Before conducting any of the analyses, I first reviewed the best practice literature, and engineers and geoscientists of British Columbia, or EGBC, provide the state of practice guidance for hazard assessments in the province. They've partnered with the provincial government to do this and written many reports on this subject. So reviewing that in relation to these 4 different hazard categories that I identified for the island, for lakes and wetlands and small streams, they suggest a simple setback from these landforms. For steep slopes, the hazard assessments are very site specific, and they recommend up to 13 different methods. The selection of a given method depends on characteristics of the area and also the data availability. And given the conditions on Bowen Island, I highlighted two different methods that are appropriate. The first one is a subjective rating analysis, and the second one is a slope stability method. And you'll see later that I decided to go with the slope stability method here. And the final category is coastal erosion and flooding. And for this, they recommend setting a minimum setback of 15 meters from the flood construction reference plane. And this plane includes things such as global sea level rise allowance, regional adjustment, high tide, surge allowance, and the wave effect allowance as well. So just to give a brief overview of the analyses that I performed, I began by compiling the available data. The primary sources of data are, of course, the 1 meter resolution elevation data and orthophotos. But I was also able to find lower resolution data for bedrock, soils, groundwater wells, and hydrologic variables. I then performed an air photo analysis, collecting air photos dating from 1947 until today, so about 70-year record, trying to identify past events that have occurred or areas that are potentially unstable today. And as well, I mapped the simple setback for the streams, lakes, and wetlands. The primary focus was on the steep slopes. That's what's specifically highlighted in the OCP. For this, like I mentioned, I decided to go with a coupled slope stability and runout model. So this is sort of broken into two different calculations here. First, the slope stability identifies the initiation zone or where the landslide originates. And secondly, you calculate where the landslide will run out. And for this, you're able to use variables such as the pore water pressure, the soil characteristics, and other variables to estimate how much rainfall would be required to cause slope instability. And from there, I took the record for daily rainfall on Bowen Island, which shows a maximum daily rainfall of about 80 millimeters, and used that for a threshold for these two different categories that I've created. So for example, the high hazard area are slopes that would become unstable during rainfall of less than 80 millimeters. So this may occur at any given year. Here's an overview of the proposed DPA map. So just a reminder that the potential hazards are broken into 4 different categories. And there's 2 inset maps. The first one around Killarney Lake, and the second one centered around Snug Cove. And finally, just to acknowledge the proposed triggers and suggested exemptions as well. These triggers are based on community examples, but also I have cross-referenced them with the geotechnical reports and data from my studies to make sure that all of these different proposed triggers have actual implications for geohazards on the island. So there's the brief overview, and I'm happy to take any questions on those.
All right, thanks very much, Mike. That looks really good. I just had a question. The setbacks are to what? The setbacks from the streams and that sort of thing, they are to what? What is the setback to? Construction or builds or?
Yeah, the setback is for, so it creates a new boundary, and then any of these triggers within that new boundary would trigger a DPA.
Okay. And I was just thinking about the landslide thing, and I mean, we just don't have a lot of, as specified there, we don't have a very thick topsoil base at all, probably anywhere on the island. If it is, it's going to be in the valleys and stuff like that. Is that a concern? Do you see mud flows?
So
like landslides?
Yeah, so in nearby areas,
Yeah.
I must admit I've not been on Bowen Island.
Okay.
That was not part of this project, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But in nearby areas, debris flows are particularly common in areas that have shallow soils.
Yeah.
So they only require up to 1 meter of soil above bedrock in these steep areas to trigger debris flows.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's it's a great report. I also have a question just before we go on there. I also have a question. Is the whole waterfront in a DP area? Even the high bank or not?
So I have here a suggested flood construction reference plane that's about 5 meters above current sea level, and then a setback of 15 meters from that boundary.
Okay.
So there would be a minimum of 5 meter setback on all coastlines, but in certain areas such as Snug Cove, it would be much further.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, is that 5 meters vertical?
Yeah, the 5 meters is vertical. The 5 meters is vertical for the new construction reference plane. And then the 15 meters is a horizontal distance from that boundary.
Yeah, well, we're certainly already covered on our setbacks on that. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to David first. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Gary. And Mike, thank you for this report. It was great to see the level of technical analysis that you did. So very pleased with that. Thank you very much. What I didn't understand was, I think it was your last slide, the triggers. In other words, as I understood it, the triggers would be some sort of work that was undertaken that would be in a position of being damaged, impacted, should this hazardous situation occur. I guess that's how I understood it. So, but I didn't really grasp why, for instance, things that were 25 square meters was a limited size. Could you just explain the triggers on that? I think it's your last slide.
Yeah, so these triggers are in relation to construction that would be damaged given this hazard occurred, or construction or a practice that may cause an increased risk of the hazard to begin with.
Right.
So soil removal would cause an increased risk, and even if it doesn't affect that given area, it may affect areas downslope, properties downslope.
I mean, I certainly agree with that. With the soil removal, that could be a trigger that causes another problem. But it was, if you could put that slide back up, because there were an array of things that I didn't really grasp why you chose, 25 square meters, for instance, like what?
A deck, yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, so the exact numbers are in relation to what nearby communities have proposed. I don't have anything in the scientific literature that specifies that 25 meter benchmark.
Okay.
That is based on nearby communities and could definitely be up for debate.
All right.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I guess I wouldn't know how to start a debate on that, because
Right, and I know the main reason for this, we're trying to not trigger something that a landowner is doing on their own property. We're trying to, these triggers are meant more for large scale construction or new development, rather than someone putting in a garden bed.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just I get it. Okay, good. Thank you very much. That's my question, Gary. Thank you.
If I can just add to that too, I mean, one way of thinking about it, David, is that, so Mike first identified the map, which would be the development permit areas.
Yeah.
And then the triggers are essentially what then would mean that you need to get a development permit.
Agreed. I understood that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Sue Ellen?
Thank you, Mayor Ander. I'm wondering, we've already got a steep slopes development permit in the official community plan, and I'm assuming that this would be to replace that. Daniel, if I can just start with that question.
Yeah.
Yes, so as proposed, essentially when the bylaws are developed it would be to amend the OCP to replace the existing steep slopes with this hazardous areas. Great, thank you. Then I just wanted to check about that. I've got a question about page 13 of your report. This is a question for Mike. Thank you for this report. And I realize you've got to gallop through it, and it's quite a bit of information. I was interested in the, at first, rainfall based only on the past. I wondered about that 80 millimeters, and then per day as a maximum. And then I saw that on page 13, it referred to 150 millimeters because of climate change. And thinking about all these flooding events and huge extreme weather events that are happening right now, they're hitting Europe, but they can be expected to hit us too. Can you explain that little, where is the 150? I see there's a moderate for that. Is that on on the map?
Yes. So let's see. Here's the map. The moderate steep slope hazard categories are in a lighter red color. They're actually not very extensive, and so without zooming in, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, this does correlate to the 80 to 150 millimeter rainfall category, like you mentioned.
Great.
And yes, this is a subjective value. Like you say, it is based on past rainfall estimates and then a moderate increase.
Okay, thank you.
Given climate change.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that consideration of climate change was in there. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, we do have a report somewhere about a big landslide that happened a long time ago. And just like that one that's on the screen, except it all went out into the ocean. And the report that we had said that that was unlikely to happen in the same place again. So I'll just, when I find it, I'll send it to you.
Yes, please do. I'm definitely interested in any past reports.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue Ellen. I'm going to go to Maureen first, and then Allison.
Thank you very much for the report, Mike. And I have a very layperson question. When you were doing this work, was there anything in particular that came as a surprise to you as you looked more closely at Bowen Island?
To be honest, I expected to see more evidence of debris flows. On the island, there are many of the stream channels that are very high gradient. And like I mentioned, debris flows only require thin soils to initiate. So I somewhat expected to see more evidence of debris flows, but like I mentioned in the report, I didn't see that evidence in the LiDAR imagery and in the air photo analysis. I think part of that could be a lot of this material, if it does travel downslope, it enters directly into the ocean, and we don't have this imagery data. So you kind of lose a lot of that record.
Okay.
But that was probably my biggest surprise when I was doing this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Maureen. Edward Allison.
Unmute myself. I guess I think we're going to need an awful lot more time to talk about this, which is, and I didn't realize that Mike was actually presenting tonight, which is why I suggested the change to the recommendation, that we have a committee of the whole meeting where we can really delve into this and refer it to a couple of other committees, and those committees could participate in the committee of the whole, and we could all get the same information. But the problems in the past has been that, I guess, the devil's in the details in the mapping. And the map it's very clear to see the two little inserts for Killarney Lake and Snug Cove, but you can't, when you look at what you've got hatched in blue around Killarney Lake, in its blue with hatching. And then you look on the small map, you know, the map, the whole island map, that looks exactly the same as every other blue line around. So how do we get so we can actually look at specific areas? Because I'm having, I guess, you know, the mapping was challenged a lot the last time, and I guess I'll use the word, you know, was it ground truth? So how do we get the mapping so we can actually look at it for areas that we're familiar with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that previous map was an 11 by 17. And so I'm happy to export this as an 11 by 17 as well. And that should show quite a bit more data.
Well, I got a printout of the map in 11 by 17, and it doesn't help much.
Right.
And I try to blow it up on
this
my
new map
iPad
here?
and it goes fuzzy.
Yeah, that's because I exported it myself from the software in a smaller format. And so I can export it in a higher resolution for example, an 11 by 17, and that'll give you more detail. We can also create a map book. That's something that we do quite often in cartography, where we make quite a few of these different insets that cover different areas of the island, and they can overlap in an area.
Okay, and then for sea level rise, I mean, I think somewhere in your report you said projected 1 meter sea level rise, but you're suggesting another 4 meters on top of that for surge and waves. Is that why the 5 meters?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. Okay. So if you were to map it today, not considering sea level rise, you would still ensure that you have a construction reference plane that is approximately 4 meters above modern sea level.
Okay, and then when you have steep slopes, landslides for the burgundy color, and you've got burgundy entirely around the coast, I'm having a little trouble figuring out that any of the areas that I'm familiar with would slip into the ocean as a landslide.
Oh, bedrock.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is one of the main difficulties here. The bedrock data that I have and the soil data is at a very low resolution. So a lot of that is not included in the analyses. The analyses are primarily focused on the elevation data and the ortho imagery because it is at a much higher resolution.
Yeah, because if you've got an area where there's no way you could stick a shovel in the ground any more than ½ an inch, then it seems to me you haven't got anything that's going to be a landslide.
Right.
All right. I think that's it, eh? Thank
So
you,
there's
Alan.
still more work to be done, if I'm
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
correctly. So you're not finished.
Yeah, this is a draft that we'd like to propose now, and we can make modifications as suggested.
And there's a chapter that still needs filling in, right?
Yeah, that is correct. I've almost finished it now. I should send the draft report to Daniel within the next week.
So my idea of having a committee of the whole would still be a good idea.
Maybe. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Well, that's the motion I'm going to make in a minute. In your late items agenda.
Oh, yeah. No, I see that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for this, Mike. This is great. I agree with Allison there that the map's going to have to be a lot more detailed if they're going to be DPAs. There's no question about that. Because people have to know where they sit in the situation for development purposes and that sort of thing. But this is great information. Just as a personal note, do you, on a scale of 1 to 10, did you see anything on Bowen Island that concerns you at all? Like, are we at a 5 or a 3, or do you think there's some stuff that is very concerning?
Certainly the really steep slopes.
Yeah.
If there is sufficient soil cover, which currently I don't have the data to support that. If there is sufficient soil cover, there is a fairly high hazard for landslides such as debris flows.
Yeah.
This could be supported by field work, where you have a technician in the field checking some of these higher risk areas, or some sort of collection of data on a larger scale.
Hey. Well, looking forward to phase 2 here when you get the rest of this all finished up. Thank you very much, Mike. And Sue Ellen?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to mention that somewhere I've got a map, or I think I may have sent it to Jennifer. Anyway, Julian Dunster did some mapping back 15 years ago or so when he was doing the Crown Lands report. So there are areas indicated where big boulders had rolled down the slope and were had come to rest at the bottom of the slope. So I think there's a map. If I find it, I'll send it to you. And secondly, I just wanted to say, you know, this mapping is so much better than it was the last time we saw it. And I just think at some point you have to accept the limits of the mapping and go ahead with your development permit area to protect your community and to protect the future. And so I don't think we should be looking for perfection in mapping. And I'm sure people aren't, but I just want to say it's much better. And I'm excited to read your report, and I'd be happy to make the motion, except I think Allison wants to.
Well, it's in the late items agenda.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so I would move that council refer this report to a future committee of the whole meeting, the Advisory Planning Commission, the Emergency Program Executive Committee, the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, and to a public open house.
And to receive for information.
And to receive for information?
You missed the first.
Oh,
part of
and the
it.
council received this report for information, the staff report dated July 12th, 2021, presenting draft findings of the hazardous areas development permit areas.
Okay, thanks, Allison. I'll second that. Any further discussion on this? If not, I'll ask a question. All in favor?
It's Sue Ellen here.
Okay.
Just a quick one. Do we need a committee of the whole, or can we just go ahead with these referrals since we just had our presentation and discussion today?
Yeah, I agree.
I think we've already got a few big things coming up in the fall, and I would prefer to let staff get going on this. So I would like to amend.
I speak to why I suggested a committee of the whole. I wasn't expecting a presentation tonight, and I could have gone on for at least another half an hour with questions and things, and I have a feeling David might have as well, wanting clarification and understanding. And my idea of the committee of the whole was that Mike would only have to present this and answer general questions once to council and all of the committees, so that he doesn't have to spend an hour with each committee presenting the document.
Well, I don't know that he's going to do that.
Well, how can we analyze it and people talk about it without the knowledge maker behind there?
Yeah, I guess you're right, but there's a lot of committees there.
Exactly. So one big, huge committee of the whole means everybody can hear and see the same presentation. I mean, we didn't advertise tonight's presentation to the committees.
Well, why don't we just leave it? The resolution is there, where we will get all those people involved, and we'll figure out a way to do it when the time comes.
And we've got another report still to come, which could be dealt with the committee of the whole.
We do, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the one I thought we could do the committee of the whole about. Well, never mind. That's okay.
Okay, let's just leave it for the time, and let's just, I'm going to ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I can't see anything here, unfortunately. My battery's, okay. Let's see. Okay. Michael, did you have a question there? Get your hand up, or is that just okay?
Just say always good if you want to.
Oh, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, just saying if you want to agree. I was just because I can't raise my hand. I can only do it rather clumsily with a little.
Understood. Okay, did you get a count on that? Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks again, Mike. And we'll look forward to the next phase. We'll move on.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so here we go again. Let's go back to the library thing, and then we'll go back to the use of public spaces. So let's try the library update. COVID year in review, Tina Nielsen, Chief Librarian, and Susan Monroe, Board Chair. Now we'll give it another try. Welcome and thank you.
Well, thank you so much for this. We're very pleased to be able to come and give you an update from the library about everything that's been happening over the last 17 months. As you can imagine, the time of COVID has presented quite a lot of challenges for the library, but I feel that we've made it through in more than one piece, doing very well, and we'd like to share with you how that's all happened and what has all happened. Now, we do have a PowerPoint.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it to open and it's telling me that I have not granted access on my Zoom account. So I'm just trying to sort that out, unless you have it, Hope, in which case it would be quicker. Sorry, I'm just not knowing where it's all grayed out and not letting me do this. Click the lock. Okay.
One sec, Tina, I'm just opening it up.
See if I can get it going. Oh,
I think
there we
Hope's
go.
got it.
Anyway, while we're waiting, I'll just say that Tina and I are here in the Zoom, but we believe and have heard that some of our library board members are on the YouTube channel, and also our new interim library director, Jen Streckman, who we'll be talking about in a wee bit.
Okay, looks like you're up and running.
There we go.
I'm just trying to get you in my, sorry.
Nice view.
Try to get you in the nice view.
There we go.
See that better?
There. Okay, so I've just spoken to that. Thank you for this opportunity. Tina.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ander and Council. It's always great to be able to just come and give you a bit of an update about how things have been going in the library. So it's been a while. First off, just wanted to say thank you so much for all the support in the last 15 months. It's been really helpful as a library that operates somewhat independently to have the resources of council and staff available, and a number of policies that were passed during COVID that helped us all when life was very unpredictable and difficult to navigate. We managed to keep all of our library staff employed in their regular hours, which was fantastic. That kind of security was really helpful for people. So I'm just going to give you a brief outline of our timeline. Like you and everyone else, March 16th, 2020 was the big decision. There was no order that required libraries to close, but the board and myself discussed and made the decision, given that recreation centers and other places were closing, that it was the best choice to make. So we closed the building, which meant that our book return was closed. We suspended our volunteer program. We continued to make electronic materials available. I and another staff, two other staff members supported the EOC during that time. In April, we began online programming. We had story time and tech tutoring happening by Zoom, either recorded or live. We opened an Instagram account to try to make our communications more varied for the island. And May 19th, we began what we called takeout service, and we allowed people to begin returning their books again. We were at that point quarantining all of our returned materials for 72 hours. So that was what our annex looked like.
We did manage to do a really wonderful thing during this time of the library being closed. Mayor Ander, you were there, and some others as well. I think the Nuclealicum sign unveiling and blessing. We had some people from the Squamish Ocean Canoe family come over to bless our new community sign and to bless the person who had made it. It was a Pauline LaBelle, the Arts Council and the library. We'd been working on that for about 3 years. It was a really wonderful, wonderful day, a really moving ceremony to take part in. As we say, there were only about 20 people there, but there is a video that you can look at on it. You can find it on the library website. It's called Building a Mighty Bridge.
And that really speaks to what we're trying to achieve with as a reconciliation effort. Anyway, it felt important, and it was one of the highlights of the year, that's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. It was very enjoyable.
It was great.
Yeah.
So July 8th, after 3.5 months of having our building closed, we reopened to the public. We had our plexiglass barriers, and staff were wearing face shields at that time. And some of our first patrons to arrive came wearing masks, even though there was no mandated mask order at that point. All of our patrons were very considerate and kind when coming into the library. Staff was adapting very quickly. Further milestones, so we reopened on July 8th at 14 hours per week. So our normal opening hours are 38 per week. So we were only able to open 14 per week, Wednesday to Saturday. We had a special couple of hours for seniors and other vulnerable populations to make sure that that was, you know, an abundance of caution to make sure those who were most vulnerable had a time of lower occupancy they could come in. Summer Reading Club went online. That was a provincial move. And our story time continued online with Zoom recordings being posted on our website. And then in October and December, we had a few other programs. We had some story walks. You might have noticed signs out on the lawn that were actually children's books that you could read with your kids. So it was a way to engage families that was safe and outside when we couldn't do programming. We were still quarantining books up until November. So we were holding them in the annex, waiting 72 hours before we would check them in. And then finally, the BC CDC gave all libraries kind of the nod that it was okay. There was such low risk, you could go ahead and stop quarantining. We continued with online workshops, and then we worked on a strategic plan, pretty much a one-year plan of how do we get through COVID. January to March, we managed to increase our hours a little bit from 14 to 18. The uncertainty of the COVID timeline and rising case counts meant that the volunteer program would not be reinstated in 2021. It was just too difficult for us to try to expect that there might be some time when we could bring volunteers back. Most of our volunteers are over 65. They were in the most vulnerable, and we didn't know when the vaccinations would be taking place.
Yeah.
So April to June, our primary goal from the library board was to try and get back to normal hours. And to do that, we needed to bring in some other staff because we did not have our volunteers filling that role. So we decided to use some of our surplus funding. We had requested some funding in the budget, which didn't go through. I know it was a tough year. So we used some of the surplus funding the library had to hire staff through to the end of the year. And then on June 1st, we managed to expand our hours back to 32 hours, which is getting a lot closer to what our normal hours would be. So we're happy that we're at that place. What we learned and what we'll take forward. I mean, there's always, in adversity, there's often opportunity to look at things. We learned that online services are very much appreciated, and many should be part of our ongoing operations. So just like these Zoom meetings, there are challenges, but there are also some real advantages to being able to do some things online. It was very clear that our website and our catalog needed to be refreshed and be more user-friendly. And then with the closure of the annex, it was we heard from people loud and clear that study space was really missed, and that they really wanted that space opened up. And we also realized that communication, especially with Bowen's younger demographic, is really improved by using social media. That's the way to really get the word out to the broadest population. Public printing, scanning, and faxing, as you all know, the business that was running that on Bowen closed during the pandemic, and it was sorely needed. Lots of people came asking us if we had it. So moving forward, it's really apparent to us that skills in technology and electronic services are really paramount for to be able to deliver the best customer service we can. We have begun to provide email to print, so you can print from home, send us an email with your print. We are also doing public scanning and faxing, and we'll see how that goes and what the demand is. But at this point, it is we are the only place on island that provides public scanning and faxing. The library volunteer program will be assessed at the end of this year in light of our need for really advanced technological skills. It's become very clear that we just need whoever's at that front counter has to be able to answer quite detailed questions about technology. And the current temporary staff that we have are both excellent, and they're doing a fantastic job. They are hired until December 31st, and having them on board has really allowed the rest of the staff to be able to pick up those things that always get left at the bottom of the pile, and really move forward with some of those goals that we've had for a long time. So we're all appreciating that greatly. So what's coming up in 21-22?
So you will have heard that we received a fantastic grant of over $400,000. Yes, it's wonderful. Government money made available to us to complete the development of the Cove Commons, the exterior plans that we've been hoping and dreaming about since that project was instigated. What you're looking at right now is it's the landscape concept plan that the original architect drew up. This will have come before you back in 2017 and was approved by you back then. And so now we've got the money to make it happen. And so work is now underway. Tectonic Architects, architecture firm is working with Tina and with Jamie Sheffer from the Arts Council to execute all that. I think the plans are being developed as we speak, and we'll look forward to that getting done. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, you will see the design when we get the design further developed. It will come to you. It will come to the advisory design panel first, and then come to council. So you will see that as it comes forward in the fall. We also were very successful in the Enabling Accessibility Grant. Some of you may recall we applied for that. I'm going to say it was in late 2019, hoping to but maybe it was early 2020, and we were rejected. We did not receive the grant at that time. We were told it was oversubscribed and we did not get it. And then just a month ago, without doing anything on our part, we were notified that indeed in the second round, we were reviewed again. Our application was reviewed again and was approved. So this was a grant application to provide automated doors into the library. So in the Cove Commons building and on the front of the library and in our disabled washrooms. So that's a fantastic $28,000 to basically install those. And luckily we have 2 years to do that work. So poor Jen, who's taking over for me, won't have to do everything all at once. So that will really help for just to be able to provide a more accessible building for everyone who wants to come and use the library.
So we wrote to you a little while ago to let you know that Tina is going to be taking a leave starting in September, a year-long leave. So we had the job of recruiting an interim library director, and I'm very, very pleased to report that we have found someone who perfectly fits the bill. Not only does she have several years of experience at the Vancouver Public Library, but also she has recently settled on Bowen. It couldn't have worked out better. We think she's terrific and are looking forward to working with her. And if she was, I'm sure she'd give us a wave if she was on the Zoom, but I believe she's on YouTube. Anyway, not only this, she and Tina made the cover of the Undercurrent, so everyone will know who she is now. And we welcome her and are looking forward to working with her.
Wonderful.
And Tina?
Yeah, just wanted to again express our gratitude to council for the support in this past very challenging 15 months, coming up close to 18 months that we've all experienced. For me personally, I have been so honored to be a part of the BIM team, the staff team, and feeling very much like it was just a great thing to have that team around us of the managers and the other staff all undergoing the same thing, all of us trying to figure out how we were going to battle this whole thing together, and council's willingness to be flexible and to write new policies. It was just I feel very grateful for all of you and for the support that you've given us during that time.
And we're grateful for the support for the library generally. We're not the biggest line item for the municipality, but we're doing our best to be tremendously effective. And I think I'm really proud of the work that Tina and the staff do. And I think you should be too. And we'd be very happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much. And we're the ones that should be thanking you for the work that you've done during this COVID period. I mean, it was extremely difficult. And for you to sort of be able to keep your doors open and help out people, it was just essential. And it's so exciting to see what's happening in the future here. And the library seems to be just very vibrant and in a really good place. And so anybody have any questions? Well, look at that. No questions.
Hey, we'll make it easy.
It's going to be really easy on you.
I've got one. Is the med shed running again?
Yes, it's been running the whole time.
Okay,
Even when the building was closed, people could reserve or they could call us and we would put things aside. So, yep, it's going. And in fact, last week we opened the annex again. So it's got the study spaces available there when we're open. It has a little bit more limitations. Masks are actually mandatory in there, and there's a maximum of 10 people allowed. We do have 2 staff members who are working in the separate little flex room in order to provide the physical distancing. But it's great to be able to open the annex to people who want to come and sit and use their computers and spend some time studying. So that's another big milestone for us.
Yeah. And thank you, Tina, for your unbelievable work at the library, and enjoy your sabbatical. It's well deserved.
Thank you. I will.
We're looking forward to your return. There's no question.
Thanks so much. Me too.
All right.
Thanks
so
much, everybody.
Take care, and thank you very much for all you do, you guys.
And thanks to you all, and good luck with a very long meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. It doesn't get any easier. All right. Take care, you guys. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Okay. We'll move back into the bylaws, which is the use of public spaces here. And it's the use of public spaces. Bylaw number 537, 2021, bylaw notice enforcement, bylaw number 196, 2008. Amendment bylaw number 538, 2021. Bonnie Brokenshire, our apologies, manager of the Environment and Parks Planning, interim manager of bylaw services. That's a mouthful. So sorry about the delay, Bonnie, but thank you, and go ahead.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present a few details for your consideration related to bylaw number 537 and bylaw number 538, and Daniel's here tonight as well.
Okay.
So just a little background, at the March 22nd council meeting, staff brought forward bylaws 537 and 538 aimed at regulating some uses and consequently alleviating impacts to public places and minimizing liability risks by way of permitting. The intent of bylaw number 537 is not to dissuade the enjoyment and recreational and casual use of Bowen Island municipalities' public places, nor is the bylaw aimed at creating barriers such as the need to obtain a permit to use municipal land for casual purposes, such as picnicking. At the March 22nd meeting, Council gave the bylaws first reading. May 10th, Council gave the bylaws second reading, and at the June 28th meeting, Council gave the bylaws third reading. Just a few details about bylaw 537 and 538. They pertain to certain uses on Bowen Island municipality land only. The bylaws do not contain.
Excuse me, Bonnie, your slides aren't advancing.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
Oh, they're supposed to be, yeah.
just going to go out. I'm going to stop sharing and I will try again. Just get them going. One sec.
That's better.
Is that, let's just see if that progresses. Is that progressing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
So I'll go to the third, thank you. A few details about bylaw 537 and 538, that they pertain to certain uses on Bowen Island municipality land only. The bylaws do not contain provisions applicable to private property, Metro Vancouver's Crippen Park, and Crown land, including Mount Gardner, Mount Collins, Radar Hill, Apodaca Provincial Park, and Apodaca Ecological Reserve. Prohibitions are included under section 3.1 and include activities such as polluting or other forms of damage to public places. Staff receives requests to use municipal land to hold events and activities, but mechanisms are not currently in place to permit such activities. So bylaw number 537 includes a mechanism for staff to allow with a permit specific activities. Section 3.2 of bylaw number 537 includes activities that are allowed with a permit. And staff has prepared bylaw number 538 to amend bylaw number 196 to include penalties for non-compliance with bylaw 537. So I'm bringing forward to Mayor and Council tonight a suggested revision and a clarification. So suggested revision based on some concern from community members over bylaw number 537, section 3.2A, and in keeping with the intent of the bylaw, which aims to allow the public to enjoy municipal public places for non-exclusive and casual purposes, such as picnicking in groups of less or more than 20 people without obtaining a permit, it is being recommended that section 3.2A be revised to, and I've just struck out the portion of this section that I'm suggesting be removed. So section 3.2A, I'm suggesting that it reads perform or take part in any procession, march, drill, performance, ceremony, concert, meeting, or assembly of greater than 20 persons except for Indigenous cultural ceremony, including any Indigenous-led ritual, gathering, tradition, or other similar activity. With this revision that I just read, a social casual gathering of up to 20 people or more in a public place, such as a municipal park, would be complying with bylaw provisions and would not require a permit as long as it is non-exclusive. It was an oversight that this little phrase was still included in this bylaw. And also, if bylaw number 537, section 3.2 A is revised, then bylaw 5.38, bylaw 538 will need to be edited accordingly. Okay. So the clarification that I'd like to make is also something that I heard from some community members is an organized activity is defined as any activity which is pre-planned, involves a group larger than 20 people, and which limits general public access to a portion of a public place. So an organized activity will require a permit. The and is very important. So or and in bylaws is very significant. So in order to require a permit, both of these sections of the sentence would have to be applicable. Just enforcement, as with all regulatory bylaws, enforcement of bylaw provisions. Both bylaws will be carried out by bylaw service officers as part of their regular duties as per bylaw services investigation policy. So the recommendations before council this evening, that the third readings of bylaw number 537, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Use of Public Places bylaw number 537, 2021, and bylaw number 538, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement bylaw number 196, 2008, amendment bylaw number 538, 2021 be rescinded, and that bylaw number 537, 2021 cited as Bowen Island Municipality Use of Public Places Bylaw number 537/2021 and Bylaw number 538/2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw number 196/2008, Amendment Bylaw number 538/2021, as amended, be read a third time.
All right, thank you very much, Bonnie. That's great. Questions for Bonnie? Is there any, or should we just go ahead with the recommendation? So I'm going to start with Sue Ellen, then David and Maureen.
I think David was first, but I'll go ahead. Just that I'm in favor of this bylaw, and I've read it very carefully, including all the both the bylaws and I think this is a way to protect our community spaces, our public spaces, and that sometimes you need regulations in order to protect things that you care about and that are important without. And I also think it's an invitation for people to participate in them, because now there's a system where they can see what is work and how to apply for a permit. And to me, it's very similar to regulations in a regional park or any of the other municipal kinds of spaces that I've worked in as a staff person. So I'm in support, and I'd be willing to read these recommendations that Bonnie's got in the slideshow there whenever it's ready.
Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen. We'll come back to you, David.
Sorry, thanks, Gary. I am in general agreement with what Sue Ellen just said, but I'm also going to suggest 3 small changes to the bylaw, and they're just simply about clarification. And they're from reading the letters and recognizing the misinterpretation of the bylaw for many folks. A couple of things, three small things. One is that we changed, as one letter, thoughtful letter suggested, instead of it, the public places bylaw, the municipal public places, just to insert that. Is it all about municipal public places? Why not call it a bylaw? And I don't have the name sitting in front of me, but just insert the word municipal public places. The second one is the really important point is not this sort of limit of 20 people. People sort of jumped on this, oh my goodness, if 21 people, we need a permit. It's not that, it's the point that Bonnie raised, and limits general public access to a portion of a public place. I'm suggesting we change the wording there slightly to delete the words portion of a. It's really limiting general public access to a municipal public place is what we're concerned about. A portion of a public place could be a tiny little spot. A portion could mean anything. So I'm suggesting delete a portion of and replace it by the word municipal public place. The third.
Councillor Hawking, can you just cite the section you're referring to in that second part?
That's okay. Yeah, I'll go to my document. Give me a sec.
And I need
So that's in the 2 definitions, the definition of organized activity and of organized sport, where they say, and which limits general public access to a portion of a public place, limits general public access to a municipal public place, in both of those, organized activity and organized sport. Then the third change is in that area 3.2, which has the prohibitions. And for the first one, I agree with the change that Bonnie is suggesting for point A, perform or take part in a procession and so on. But I would add for 3.2A, B, and E that we add and limits general public access to a municipal public place. Because the issue isn't about 20 persons, it's just reiterating the point that is made further up above and reminding folks that that's really what the issue is, limiting general public access to a municipal public place. So that would be A, perform or take part in any procession and so on, deleting the informal part, but adding in the public place. B, the same thing, it's organized sport or activity. And E is the same because you're occupying a public space, a municipal public space. So those are my 3 proposed changes that I think explain things a little bit better and clarify issues, but don't change the nature, the meaning of the bylaw or what we're trying to do here.
Okay, thank you, David. Is everybody okay with what David's saying there? Does anybody have a correction to that?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
First of all, for the 3.2, the intro section to 3.2 says of this bylaw, a person must not in or on any public place. So you're going to have to put municipal in front of public place there.
Agreed.
And I don't know why you would put municipal in front of just some of them and not in front of all of them.
I'm suggesting actually you change the title and you put it in front of all of them to clarify.
Okay, but 3.2 intro line says any public place. So if you're going to be consistent, I think you have to insert the word municipal in front of public place.
I agree.
But that then takes me to my concern about municipal public place. Because if you go to the definition of public place, it means any property owned, held, or under the care, custody, or possession of the municipality, but not limited to municipal buildings, wards, parks, trails, beaches, greenways, playgrounds, and streets. So my question has to do with beaches, because somebody raised the issue of the intertidal zone between low tide and high tide. So is that area of a beach under our control? Bonnie?
So we're allowed to regulate the use
Yeah.
in that zone from high water or natural boundary to the sea, 300 meters seaward.
Okay.
Just like we did in the public use of water areas.
So then my problem is David's suggestion of putting municipal in front of public place in those places means it's only on if somebody can do whatever they want on a beach.
Yeah, the other thing is public place in the definition means property owned, held, or under the care,
Exactly.
position of the municipality. So I think it's a little bit overkill personally, but
Yeah, well, that's my problem, and it starts to run into all these other problems. So I think there's some unintended consequences of what David's suggesting, where it will then open up some things in other things. And if you're going to change the title, a bylaw to regulate uses, then you also have to change part 1.1, which is the citation for the bylaw. And I was thinking about that's what we need to do with add municipal, but the problem is it creates this problem with spaces that we don't own and we don't control, because control means things that are leased and stuff, but we have the right to regulate, such as beaches. So I think we should just leave it the way it is and make it very clear that it doesn't apply to private property. Maybe you put in regulate uses of public places, brackets, not private property. And an explanatory note or something. I mean, people are going to understand it eventually, if we start making it clear what the rules are.
David, what do you think? I'm thinking it's a little bit of overkill at this point.
I'm not sure that there's such a thing as overkill on this. I mean, we still had letters saying I won't be able to go to Bowfest Field.
Well, I know, but we can't.
Well, you have to remind everybody that Bowfest Field is not a municipal controlled place.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, I don't know.
It's just the same as somebody's complained about camping, but that we're regulating camping. Well, the OCP doesn't allow camping. Oh.
Yeah, no, somebody has to take responsibility for recognizing what's going on here. I mean, it's very well stated. I agree with you, David. It's a little bit frustrating that people are misunderstanding what's going on here, but I hesitate to go that far. But I'll listen to concerns. Allison, is that it for you?
Well, I was just going to say, can we leave it the way it is? Yeah. And if we start, and write a little layman's language interpretation of the thing, that clearly lays out what a public place is.
Well, it does. It's right there.
No. People don't read the details, Gary. They read the synopsis. So we haven't done a little synopsis.
Well, maybe that's what we should do is
simplify. And if it turns out to still be a misunderstanding, then we can look at some way to amend it. But I think there's doing some little picky some spot amendments and not doing it in others, we're going to end up with a bunch of unintended consequences.
Well, I just.
Bonnie's got her hand up too.
Yeah, I understand that. I think we're reading way too much into this, and I think, you know, it's not going to get any better by putting in a whole bunch more direction for people. Maureen?
Oh, Bonnie's got her hand up. I think she might be able to.
Okay, Bonnie, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to reiterate that the citation is Bowen Island Municipality. So it is in there. I mean, that's maybe not clear to some, but all of our bylaws are you know, have that in front of them.
I guess it's, everybody says a public place means the Crown land, the provincial land, everything that's owned by the feds, everything that's owned by Metro, and everything that we own.
But we don't have jurisdictional authority over.
I know.
No.
But that's what people are assuming, because that's what the general understanding of a public place is.
Well,
what about adding a whereas at the beginning?
Yeah, like that.
Akin to what Councillor Morris was suggesting, that it's like, you know, and whereas the intent and purpose of this bylaw is to regulate use of municipally owned lands and has no application to provincial or
Crown or Metro Vancouver lands.
I think, Bonnie, in your preamble, you made it quite clear that this was municipally owned property. And I wonder if we just couldn't put something underneath another whereas or something like that underneath there, just to make it abundantly clear.
I mean, it does.
Folks got her hand up, and people aren't going to read the resolution. They're going to read the bylaw. So can we have explanatory notes on a bylaw?
Has to be a portion of the bylaw. I was just going to note, and it may not be useful, but just if we're adding whereases, those parts of the bylaw are not legally binding. So I would caution putting it there and put it as an actual provision contained within the bylaw, because otherwise it will hold no weight if it were to be, you know.
Yeah, this is
public space does that.
It's a clarification.
It is clearly defined in section 2.1 in interpretation under public space. This would just be for clarifying purposes and has no real legal bearing. I mean, you could put it on the website too.
Well, in the first whereas, it says on or near public places. Could you not then just put in there places owned or controlled by the municipality, including beaches? Right, as a sort of right after that, public places.
Where is that, Allison?
Right
Well, in the whereas, Maureen, at the very top, the second line says on or near imposed requirements for the on or near public places. And there's some way, and I'm not sure what the whether it should be a comma or a semicolon, of putting in municipally owned.
I wonder about the distance between the whereas and the list of prohibitions. It may make more sense to add it to the beginning of
3.2 and 3.1.
3.2. And so except as provided for blah, 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 or by permit, a person must not in or on any public place owned by the municipality or regulated, controlled by the municipality, and then go into the list.
What if that's in the definition? I don't understand why we have to do it again. It's just
can we put a little explanatory note, see definition? So they'll go look at the definition?
I don't think you want cross references. I think you want the words where people are reading the restriction.
Yeah.
And that's what David was trying to do in the.
Well, I understand that.
The problem was he was repeating it 3 times and then it raised questions about the others. But it's actually an overriding principle that could be added to the introductory piece to 3.2. A
And I
person
think we have to
must
put the
not
full
give support
definition in there.
on any
Yeah,
public
you'd
place.
have to put the full definition there. If
Right.
you're
Sorry.
going to, if you're going to reference part of the definition, you have to put the whole definition.
Otherwise, you've got unintended consequences of
Yeah.
leaving something out that you want to regulate. I think we should just.
There's communication and education, and then there's the legal bylaw. This is the legal bylaw. It has to stand up in court. We can do all kinds of other information, education, communication, and I'm sure Bonnie will. Excuse me for interrupting.
I'll back
No,
on that.
that's good.
A layman's version.
Okay, Maureen, I'm going back to you again. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually had another point altogether, which was that some of the folks who wrote in were concerned about cost, and the cost seemed to be a bit steep. And at the very end of the bylaw, there is a note that says requests by groups or individuals for waiving, reducing, or amending a fee outlined in this bylaw will be forwarded to the Chief Administrative Officer or designate for consideration and approval. So I'm curious about what the criteria are for waiving, reducing, or amending.
We need a policy.
What number is that?
Very end.
It's at the very end in Schedule B.
Okay.
So
Also on page, anyway, never mind.
So my question is, what are the criteria for waiving, reducing, or amending?
There haven't been
Everybody will be
criteria
looking.
set. I know I talked to Liam about this component, and I guess someone would have to demonstrate the need. It would be prohibiting a good activity, an activity that would be conducive to utilizing the public space. Like, we want people to utilize public spaces, but I mean, there is a discretionary component to that as far as the Chief Administrative Officer is concerned, and that decision.
Okay.
Okay, and I understand the discretionary powers of the CEO, and I actually think that's a good explanation that that power would be vested in the CEO. But I think in any public education piece, public information, that this point, which many people will not get to, should be underscored as, if you're doing something great, cost is going to be prohibitive. There is this mechanism vested in the CEO to help to enable your activity to go forward. Okay. So I wasn't quizzing on whether a policy is being established. I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware that there was that discretion. Thanks, Bonnie.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Rob.
Yeah, where to start on this? First off, I'm a bit surprised because for me right now, this is a really, really big decision. For me, I've thought about it a lot moving through this process. And I sort of get this impression that, oh, it's no big deal, from everybody else. And, I voted against first, second, and third reading, partly because I didn't feel that there was, we had 3 public comments, that's it. And nobody knew about it. And then the article came out in the undercurrent. And then all at once, people found out about it. And, I mentioned some counselors that, huge conversation on the internet about it. We started getting letters. The conversation on the internet and Bowen and everything else, which I don't take that for, gospel, but very negative on this, not positive at all. very little support. And I've talked to quite a lot of other people, actually, just right after third reading, before it sort of came out in the undercurrent. And I talked to about 8 people, and they were not aware of it. A lot of them are actually confused with the land use bylaw. And when I said, take a look at it and just give me some feedback, the feedback was very negative. It wasn't good at all. So I'm surprised, to have this like 10 minutes on an agenda as if it's a bit of a housekeeping thing, and let's just get it done. I think for something this major, and I think it is a big thing, to tell people that this is not allowed on your public property, or you can only do this if you get a permit on public property. I mean, that's huge. That's really big. And that takes a lot of consultation with people and talking to a lot of people and getting broad community consensus on it. And I don't think we have broad community consensus. I think we have really broad community consensus that a lot of these areas are not where we should be moving on Bowen. So I'm definitely not going to be supporting this, but I really have issues with the fact that I don't think we've looked through a lot of these details. I mean, Allison brought up unintended consequences. I work in the public service. I have to deal with a lot of these rules that come out and enforce them. And especially during COVID, it was a nightmare. And created lots of animosity within even our fitness center, with people. Now they got a rule they can point to, and they can get the muni after them or whatever. Like even something as simple as banning smoking and vaping on public property. Who knows where the property is? I wouldn't know. And now people are going to go. What, they're going to go smoke in the forest or somewhere else, or people are going to feel guilty about having that smoke before they go on the job site in the cove in the morning. And there's multiple. I mean, there's things in here that I think we all agree on, not destroying public property and whatnot. But the one especially on the 3.2 on the gatherings public, very negative feedback from the community on that. I don't know. To me, it's like what the earlier caller said, we should be encouraging more people to get together. It's a great thing. And I don't know how that would ever stand up to a charter challenge where, we have the freedom of peaceful assembly and an association and expression. I mean, how was that going to match? So I think we're getting into a lot of trouble here. I think this is going to create more issues for us managing our properties, if that's really what we're wanting to do. I don't think we've had any significant conversation with the community. I haven't even had any conversation with my fellow councillors about this. It's sort of just come up. It sort of came out of one issue we had in the Lower Cove, and now we're dealing with a huge broad range of issues that have, staff implications, permitting implications. But for me, it's also like we need the buy-in from the public on this, and I don't see any buy-in. And a lot of these rules, I break some of them. I can name 2 or 3 in here where I'm like, oh, I better be hiding myself. Now, I don't want to be hiding on public property, sneaking, and then people start obeying certain rules and then other ones. So I am, with extreme prejudice, going to be voting against this. And I think it's a real mistake. And I think it's going to create a lot of issues down the road. And I can't support it. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. Maureen, is your hand up again?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add as a rebuttal to Rob, because I stuck my hand up again.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got a permit requirement for a parade or assembly in public on the roadways now anyhow, and there's municipal liability issues to worry about. Do you want us to get a great big huge lawsuit because somebody had an organized activity and somebody fell and broke their ankle?
Oh, Allison, I think this is going to create liability for us, because if we say yes to something and we don't follow through with something, now it's going to come back on us. But I'll give you an example. I was on the ferry on Saturday last week, and a group of about 30 cyclists came off the boat. Great. Awesome. I actually knew some of them. They were all bike racers. Bowen's now known as the place to go train for hills. Afterwards, they want to go sit somewhere, on a piece of our public property and have a snack.
Don't do that.
I think there's so much
there'd be
uncertainty
no
within the community about what can and can't be done right now. Like I wouldn't even be able to say half the time if I'm on Krypton property or on our municipal property. Most people wouldn't even be able to. So there's people they're not going to go looking at this, and then they might say, oh, I better not do that because I might have to go get a permit, and that's another hurdle. And I've organized lots of events where permits are hurdles. It's just another step to go through. So I think what you said is best. Is there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences, and I think we're actually taking on a lot of liability by doing this, because if we don't follow through properly, or we start making mistakes with issuing permits where we now demanded permits or not followed up on them, I think it's going to come back on us. So I don't, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Sue Ellen?
Thank you, Mayor Ander. I'd like to move that the third readings of bylaw number 537, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipal Use of Public Places bylaw number 537, 2021, and bylaw number 538, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw number 196, 2008, amendment bylaw number 538, 2021, be rescinded, and that bylaw 537, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Use of Public Places bylaw number 537, 2021, and bylaw 538, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement bylaw number 196, 2008, amendment bylaw number 538, 2021, be read a third time as amended.
Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen. I will second that. Further comment? I just want to say that this isn't as horrible as everybody thinks it is, and it's not. It's a protection of municipal spaces for the general public, and that's all it is. And as we get larger, we're going to find that, not everybody is easy to get along with. And we've already proved that a few times. And that's why, we have some bylaws, but they're not prohibitive. They're not going to stop anybody here. And I just, to say that this is it's not a complicated document by any stretch of the imagination. I think we straightened out that the number 20 on that part of it. And I think that, in my mind, I think this is a good starting point, and I don't think we're going to have the problems that everybody thinks we're going to have with this. I think it's pretty straightforward, and I don't think it's as prohibitive as everybody thinks it is. So I'm certainly obviously voting in favor of that. And at some point in time, the public has to take on a responsibility of actually reading the bylaws. And, as much as I hate to say that, this isn't as bad as it certainly is not as bad as everybody's making it out to be. Anyway, is there any further discussion? David, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Most people don't read bylaws. They read Facebook and the undercurrent. But I like Sue Ellen's point a little while ago is, okay, this is a legal document, but the communications has to be well done. And I think we need to do that. And, to Rob's point about the cyclists, well, but they're not going to limit other people's access to a place. I mean, that's one of the critical things. It's not about stopping 20 people from gathering. It's about stopping people from dominating a place so that others can't use it. So I think some clear communications is important, because there's been such a discussion around this. So I'm supporting it. But I think the communication job is kind of important here. Thanks.
Well, I think, David, to your point, I think it's important that we revisit this in a short period of time and see if it's got off the rails, but I don't think it will have. Michael Kale?
Gary, I've been listening to the discussions going backwards and forwards, and firstly, the amendments are very welcome. I think it proves we've listened, we've taken some obvious steps. In terms of a point that David just made, and I think it's hugely valid about communication. If you think of this island, we have some crown lands, we have municipal lands, and we have metro lands. And if you ask the majority of people, they would be very hard pushed to say, boy, this is a metro land, and this is crown land, and this is municipal land. And we've made it clear now this is a municipal lands bylaw. But how many people really clearly understand what part of this island belongs to the municipality as belongs to Metro? So the communications exercise, and I agree with David entirely, is huge. I would, albeit, I hate over regulating things, and there's a preposterousness about having over regulation in a small island. It runs countervail to so much we believe in. However, as someone said very wisely, not everyone is our friend, and yes, we do. And I could support this, but Gary, to your point about having a review of this in pretty short order to make sure that we haven't given birth unintentionally to a monster and done some things inadvertently that we never intended to. Because to take Robb's point, this is multifaceted and it's very broad ranging. So if this is to launch the platform, now we've got these amendments in place, fair enough. But we better recognize the fact that A, we need to review, and secondly, that there is very limited understanding as to precise boundaries of whom owns what lands in this island. So we have our work cut out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying, Michael, and I agree with you 100%. And I think if this moves forward, I think we should do some definitely a communication piece, but I don't know in all aspects of our all the different areas where we can communicate in the paper and try to just explain what this is and the boundaries that are involved and that sort of thing, because it's obviously people are misinterpreting it very badly.
In order, Mr. Mayor, given the time constraints, can we vote on the motion, please?
Yeah, okay, so any further?
An hour and a half behind time.
I'm well aware of that, thank you. And so I'll ask the question, all in favor? Aye. Okay, and opposed? Michael, I can't see your hand there, but so I have councillors, sorry, on the opposed.
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to Gary.
Councillor Winan opposed, and was there somebody else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that moves on to the next session. And we're going to move on to Crown Land Referral, and this is 8.2. And it's a CLR-01-2020, 1160 Ecclestone Road, Timothy Carl Cloak. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Go ahead, Daniel.
Mayor Ander, we technically need a motion to extend the meeting.
Yes, okay.
5 minutes? Can we have 5 minutes?
Can we? Okay.
No, just keep going.
Like, can we just get through this part of it? Or
Yeah,
does everybody need a break?
It's just a procedural that we extend the meeting.
I
past
move that we
9:30.
extend the meeting past 9:30.
Thank you.
I
I second
second.
that. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's okay. Let's get this through this part and have a break. How's that sound? We'll finish this one up. Okay, so Daniel, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so I have here tonight for council a Crown Land referral for 1160 Ecclestone. This is an application or a referral from the province for an application for a specific permission for a dock. So the location is located in Mannion Bay, 1160 Ecclestone. And the location is there, and the property is, the waterfront is in the WG1, so the Water General 1 zone of our land use bylaw. So we've received the referral from the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development. As part of the application, they conducted an environmental assessment, indicated no concerns with that Transect 5 that was conducted where the dock is located. By way of background for this application that I'm sure council is aware of, but on June 12th, 2021, council issued a variance so DVP 210020, and this varied regulations include the minimum setback of structures from a lot line, the minimum setback of a private moorage facility from any lot abutting public beach access, and the regulation that it not impede pedestrian access along the beach portion of the foreshore. The DVP also required as a condition of the permit the provision of a statutory right-of-way, an SRW, to allow public access from the Ecclestone Road allowance to the Ecclestone Beach. And then included in the report is the analysis that staff does for private, for Crown land referrals for moorage facilities, as essentially checking, does it comply with our land use regulations? So as you can see, staff said based on the variance permit, which varied 3 of the provisions, that the proposal complies with regulations in the land use bylaw. The other staff comment is just as part of the variance permit, council received quite significant public comment on the proposed variance. And so as part of the provincial process, they seek public comment for their 10-year approvals, but staff recommend that the comment that was received to the municipal council be provided as part of the referral response to Flinroe, as we've done with other applications. So based on that, the recommendation is first that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to enter into the statutory right-of-way that is provided as part of the staff report. And then second, that whereas we've received a referral and that whereas we've issued a variance permit to vary our land use bylaw regulations, be it resolved that council direct staff to indicate the municipality has no objection to the 10-year application and to forward the correspondence that we received to the province as part of our response.
All right. Thank you very much, Daniel. Discussion, Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. And just, I know we chatted about this last week, Daniel, but this is saying that it falls within our it falls within our zoning to do this dock, but we're not saying, yes, we support a dock there. And I like the, because there has been controversy about this, and I want us to stay out of that. And I do think it's great that you are referring those letters over to the province so that they can make they're fully aware of what's happening and a decision being made around that. And I just want to make sure that we're staying out of that process, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of people having conversations with the province about this moving forward about the dock.
So what I've prepared as a staff report is just that compliance, that it complies with our bylaws. And so we have no objections. It's not endorsing or opposing, but it's just saying it complies with the land use bylaws that are in place.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel. Sue Ellen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll be voting against this regretfully, unless we sever some bits. I disagree that I think it's going to limit or restrict public use of the beach. And I won't go into all the reasons I said last time for voting against it, but I'll just, I don't see that has changed. And I'll just hold my course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, so
I'll move the motion.
You move the motion, Allison. I'll second it. Any further discussion? I don't see any hands up, so I will ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and opposed? Okay, Councillor Fast in opposition. Thank you. And it does pass. And okay, so 10 minutes okay for everybody? How about if we come back at I don't know, 45 or 50?
What?
Do you want to take a break or not?
No, I just want to keep going.
Yeah.
Somebody has to leave the
2
room.
minutes. How about
Go
2
ahead.
minutes?
Somebody might have to go.
Well, they can sit out and go, just like we do at a council meeting.
Well, I don't know if that's fair. I'd like
Well,
to
we
take
only need 5 minutes for that.
Okay, 5 minutes then. That's all.
All
you
right.
get.
I get it.
All right.
Yeah.
Around 42, we'll be back. Thank you.
I see you're still on here. You don't want to watch it on the YouTube channel?
I don't know if he's here or not, Allison.
Oh, you didn't carry on.
Yeah. I'm ready. The two people that wanted it are the only ones that are back.
I'm here. I'm just walking around.
All right. Get the blood flowing again.
Yeah.
Eight 15, 9:41. Sheesh. It's got to be some kind of a bad record, eh?
Well, we still have a member of the public with us,
Yeah. Well,
and we're being well, Hope stop the recording, or should we still recording?
I don't know. It's just, it's a long one. That's all I'm saying.
We're still recording.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, we got a quorum. Let's go.
Yeah. There's David, but he's a long way from the screen. Here he comes. And Michael's there. Okay, so who are we missing? Maureen? Oh, we got Maureen.
No,
Yes, sorry.
just Robb.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I think he left the meeting.
Oh,
Really?
Well, he's not in the meeting at the moment.
Okay, let's start with the CAO update. Liam?
Hey, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll try to keep it brief, but I did want to update you on a couple of things. One is a bit of a status update with the Mount Gardner file and the work that we're doing with the Ministry of Forest Lands Natural Resource Operations regarding the council resolution to request the ban on motorized use on the trails. And so I continue to connect with the statutory decision maker on this file at the province on every 2 weeks to check in to see the status of the work. I continue to be informed that they are moving ever closer to a decision. All of the background work has been done by staff to present a decision note to the decision maker, and that the decision maker is considering the question at hand, but no decision has been provided yet. And I have been also communicating quite frequently with some concerned groups on the island and concerned members, and they've been very cooperative and respectful and working collaboratively toward that end of council's motion. And I had been requesting the groups to hold off on writing letters to the minister and to the ministry to to give staff the time they needed to deliberate on the question. However, I think the groups have become restless because it has been almost a year since council made that resolution, and their concern, which is justly so, is around the time that it's taking to make a decision. So you will have noticed a recent activity in letter writing to the minister and to ourselves on that note. So I just wanted to make you aware of where we're at with that. I continue to engage with ministry staff and continue to be hopeful, but I think, you know, some pressure is perhaps helpful to try to get a timely decision.
Yeah.
We did make a request for a minister meeting with that minister for the UBCM convention in September, and so hopefully we'll get that minister's meeting, and then we'll be able to you know, have a decision by that point in time.
Okay.
Any questions on that file?
That was on, yeah, that was on the motorized, you know, all the communication, Rob, we're getting on the motorized travel. On.
Yeah,
That was
Liam.
an update. Yeah.
Liam, just we're not being recorded now? We're off?
No, we are recording. We're still in the public open meeting.
Still open public meeting.
Okay. All right, I just missed the start of that. Is there, Liam, I missed your update on that. Is there anything we need to do on that motorized, where are we at with that? If you could just.
Yeah, there's nothing that council needs to do. I was just providing an update of, you know, where we're at in terms of still engaging at a staff level. So,
okay. Yeah. Okay, we'll let that run through. Thanks.
And then I have some great news in our search to find a new chief financial officer. We have formally accepted. We have a formally accepted offer from a CFO that will be joining us. August 16th is the proposed start date at this point in time. So Sheila McCutcheon, not McCutcheon, McCutcheon, and I'll provide an update in writing too. We just received a formal notice today, and so very exciting. Sheila was previous CFO for Village of Cache Creek, McBride, and Mackenzie, and has also been a CAO as well at McBride, and has also been corporate officer and done some work in bylaws as well. So has extensive experience with municipal government, and is keen to move to the south from the northern area of the province, and has family in the Lower Mainland and has friends on Bowen. And so we're actively looking for some housing opportunities for her, and keenly awaiting her arrival. So more news will follow, but just wanted to share that good news with all
Excellent.
of you.
Yeah, that's great news. And if anybody can come up with some accommodation, you hear of anything at all, it's going to be.
Is this to purchase or to rent, Liam?
Well, she would like to purchase, but is keen to rent also, if that's
initially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that Liam?
That's it for my CAO update.
All right, thank you. So Metro Vancouver Director, David Hawking, update to council.
Thank you, Gary. Just one item, and it's the board meeting this Friday, the Metro Vancouver Housing Board meeting. Remember 2 years ago, they have put out those expressions of interest to see about partnering with vacant municipal land, with municipalities on vacant municipal land. Well, they're doing round 2 of that. And so that will be coming out this fall, and with a deadline of Christmas. I forwarded it to Birch, this information, so that Robin could see that. But I found our discussion about the septic field quite interesting, because that might be needed after all. for Birch, if they're interested in moving forward. But we'll see how what they feel about that. But anyway, that round 2 is coming out this fall. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Island Trust Municipal Trustees, Fast and Kale, update to council.
Did you want to go first this time, Michael?
I'm going to pass this. I have no report to make for this council tonight.
Okay, thank you. I'll just refer everybody to 12.5 and 12.6 in the agenda. There's a bunch of correspondence in there. And I just wanted to point people to 12.6G. This is something new in our, I think, it's a Trust Area Services quarterly report. So this is one of the parts that Bowen contributes to. It's the federation-wide things like advocating against potential oil pollution problems and things like that. Secretariat Services for Howe Sound Community Forum and some of the other things that we're involved in, like the Coastal Douglas Fir Partnership, that kind of thing. So just refer to it. That's all I'm going to say. 12.6G. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen. Councillor Nicholson, re-update to council on Metro Van Regional Parks Committee meetings.
We had a meeting a week ago, Wednesday. The main focus was the 5-year budget for parks. No landing. It will go through the board. And there'll be more to report at a later time. This Wednesday, we're having our annual parks tour, which is the highlight of the year. So this year, we're going to nearby to Grouse and to Capilano to take a look at the hatchery up there and the changes they've made since that terrible accident that occurred a year or so ago. So that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. And Councillor Alison Morse, update to council on Transit Mayor's Council meetings.
We're not meeting until Thursday. So, and on Thursday, we'll be getting an update on the latest round of consultation on Metro or Transport 2050. And so.
Perfect, thank you. So 11.6 is moved to a closed meeting. The recommendation is the council move to a closed meeting immediately following the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to section 90-1 A, E, I, and J of the community charter. And we'll go through the information items, and just in case somebody's still out there, question period. Nick might have been hanging in for that.
You need a second.
And sorry, go ahead. Is he still there?
I think I'm stunned now, but to move to a closed meeting, do we need a seconder? If so, I'll second it.
I was
yes.
unanimous consent, but yes, that either way works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we're at a question period, and this meeting is now adjourned. And
link?
Sorry?
I'm just asking Hope to email me the link.
Sure
and
thing.
we're an hour over, and we'll switch right into the closed if that's okay with everybody.